Council President, committee members, and participants. We are now live.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all. We are reconvening this morning's budget hearing on the FY2024 budget. We appreciate you being involved and watching our session today. For our first witness this afternoon, Mr. McDermott, who is testifying.
Our first witness is the General Manager of SEPTA, Leslie Richards.
Good afternoon, Ms. Richards. Are you connected?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. How are you? Whenever you're ready, you can please proceed with your testimony.
Okay, sure. I'd like to start off with just a few minutes of outlining our budget, and then happy to answer questions. So good afternoon, everybody. Council President Clark, Transportation Committee Chair Johnson, members of the City Council, other guests, including SEPTA board members, Deputy Managing Director Mike Carroll and Deputy Mayor Deborah Mahler. Also joining me today from SEPTA are Acting Transit Police Chief Charles Lawson, as well as members of the SEPTA team representing various departments. Thank you so much for this opportunity to be with you today to discuss SEPTA's fiscal year 2024 operating budget request and updating you on SEPTA's initiatives and priorities. SEPTA's operating budget is funded through local, state, and federal government subsidies, fares, and other revenues. The City of Philadelphia's $110 million contribution under Mayor Kenny's budget proposal represents 6% of SEPTA's operating budget. It leverages $850 million in state operating funds. The city's $5.7 million capital contribution represents 1% of SEPTA's total capital budget and will support a total capital budget of approximately $976 million. Each dollar of capital funding the city provides leverages $69 from the state and federal government. You'll hear this over and over today, and I will enjoy discussing it more, but cities and their transit systems are fundamentally linked, and our fortunes are tied together. Robust transit drives productive, equitable, and healthy cities with a reduced carbon footprint. Vibrant cities and their residents and visitors fill buses, trains, and trolleys throughout the day and night. And SEPTA is proud to fulfill its vital and irreplaceable role here in the Philadelphia region. As the city continues to navigate through recovery, SEPTA is grateful for Council's consideration of our budget request and your continued support and partnership. This is a critical year. By next April, SEPTA will have exhausted the last of its federal COVID emergency operating assistance, and the authority will be at a crossroads facing significant budget shortfalls. To meet these challenges, earlier this month, SEPTA released its fiscal year 2024 operating budget, which forms the blueprint for our path forward. We are making critical investments in customer and employee safety and security, building ridership, and preparing the authority to sustain operations in an uncertain future. I am realistic about the immense challenges we face. I'm also confident that we have the strategies and the right team in place. I also want to stress that we cannot do this alone. With a safety and security budget that has increased more than 60% since fiscal year 2022, SEPTA will continue to make significant investments in safety and security by hiring additional transit police officers, fully funding our new virtual patrol unit to maximize our camera network of over 30,000 cameras, expanding vulnerable population outreach through our award-winning SCOPE program. Last June, SEPTA increased pay for new and existing transit police officers, and we are beginning to see that investment pay off. By the end of June, we will be adding 24 new transit police officers, including 20 who are currently in the police academy. This represents a staffing increase of more than 10%, and we anticipate another 20 to 25 cadets entering the academy in June. While crime on SEPTA accounts for only 1% of all crime in the city of Philadelphia, antisocial behavior in our stations and vehicles discourages people from riding and disproportionately impacts transit-dependent Philadelphians. SEPTA continues to do all we can to make the system safe for our customers and employees. We will continue to work with stakeholders and victim assistance organizations to ensure that our strategies are informed and effective. And we need additional partnership and resources from the city, the police department, and the district attorney's office to make SEPTA a higher priority. Telework and changed commuting patterns coming out of the pandemic have significantly disrupted when and how people travel. Today, SEPTA provides more than 600,000 daily trips throughout the city and region. Though ridership in the form of trips taken may never return to pre-pandemic levels, a tremendous number of people rely on SEPTA every single day. SEPTA's budget will support equitable mobility and promote ridership growth by deferring fare increases for another year and introducing 2 new fare enhancements. We've added a second free transfer on transit, and we are making an inner ring of 24 city regional stations open to monthly and weekly TransPass use. Our budget also continues to expand opportunities for businesses and institutions to participate in the Key Advantage program, SEPTA's flagship ridership growth initiative. And I would like to formally urge Council to adopt approval of the city joining the Key Advantage program, as well as another of Mayor Kenny's budget proposals, the Zero Fare Pilot Program for low-income residents. These initiatives will promote ridership, encourage broader return to office efforts, and enhance equitable mobility options for thousands of city employees and low-income residents who rely on public transportation. More riders on SEPTA is good for everyone, and we look forward to working with you to implement these programs. In spite of our comprehensive efforts to build back ridership, farebox revenue will continue to fall more than 30% below pre-COVID levels for the foreseeable future. SEPTA is addressing these challenges head-on through its transformational efficiency and accountability program. We've already achieved $38 million in annual returns, and we are on pace this year to reach $102 million in recurring annual benefits by the end of 2024. However, savings alone will not balance SEPTA's budget. Once all federal COVID relief is expended in the upcoming fiscal year, SEPTA will face a sustained structural budget deficit of approximately $240 million per year, and that begins in fiscal year 2025. Unless new sources are identified, SEPTA will be forced to implement large-scale service reductions and fare increases in fiscal year 2025 and beyond in order to balance our budget. Potential service cuts of 20% would drastically limit service and increase passenger travel and wait times on all modes, while increased fares of 30% would disproportionately impact low-income and transit-dependent riders. To preserve one of our most critical resources, safe, efficient, high-capacity mass transit, SEPTA is ready to work with funding partners at all levels, in Harrisburg, in Washington, and regionally, to address this fiscal cliff. Despite these financial challenges, I am proud that we have remained committed to our strategic plan and pursuing long-range priorities that we know are critical to serving the region in the future. We continue to make important progress on the development of a new, more efficient, reliable, and easier to understand bus network through our Bus Revolution initiative. And I'm very grateful to this council for your partnership and advocacy on behalf of your residents. From new fare enhancements to how we procure goods and services to building a high-quality workforce that reflects our customers and communities we serve, equity continues to be a cornerstone of the work SEPTA does every day. In January, SEPTA hired our first ever Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, Emmanuel Murthel. She'll continue building and cultivating a culture within SEPTA that promotes inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. Among the responsibility under Emmanuel's wide portfolio, SEPTA has made important strides as a leader in the Equity and Infrastructure Program. We're expanding SEPTA's Small Business Set-Aside Program to facilitate more opportunities for historically underutilized businesses to compete as primes for contracts. And we're entering into a reciprocal agreement with Chicago Transit for diverse business certification. Finally, we are leveraging state and federal investment to continue to rebuild our infrastructure, replace aging vehicles, and pursue projects of significance that will position SEPTA and the region for future. SEPTA's proposed capital program fully funds SEPTA's commitment to make all Broad Street and Market Frankford line stations ADA accessible within the next 12 years. And we fully fund the replacement of our trolleys with an accessible fleet as part of trolley modernization. Our board awarded that contract in February. And the capital program fully funds the replacement of Market Frankford line cars. And we are anticipating issuing our RFP later this spring. So thank you for the opportunity to be here this afternoon. I look forward to continuing to working with all of you to advance SEPTA's priorities on behalf of our customers, your constituents, and the communities all of us serve together. And I welcome any questions you may have.
Thank you. And thank you for your testimony, and look forward to continue to work with you as we deal with the challenges associated with the post-pandemic. I guess we can say that to some degree, but although it is still here with us. You referenced earlier in your testimony, you talked about the percentage of the county/city's contribution to SEPTA's budget. I don't know if you intended on doing it, but it sounded as if you were suggesting it was minimal as compared to the larger contribution, the larger revenue stream. What are the other counties in comparison to the city of Philadelphia? Are the other counties contributing more from a percentage?
Yeah, so the other counties are contributing. For instance, Philly represents 6% of our budget. The other counties make up another 2% of the budget. So our local match is 8% of our budget. What I would like to, actually, I'll just show you because we're not.
Hold on one
Sure.
second. I'm sorry. So I just want to make sure I understand. We make up 6%, County of Philly. The surrounding counties make up 2%, an aggregate of 2%. So we're much higher than the surrounding counties in terms of our contribution. Is that accurate?
Yes.
All right.
I mean,
okay. I'm just saying, you laid it out like as it, and I know you didn't intend it. It suggested
no,
that
I just
put in a small amount of money.
More broadly, what I would like to get across and that everyone would understand is the low numbers of local investment that the region makes in SEPTA, and that other agencies such in Chicago and Boston and DC receive a much higher percentage of investment from both their cities as well as their regional counties. And that's why they are able to get large amounts of money. In fact, Chicago, Boston, and DC have each received over $1 billion in competitive infrastructure grants because of those increased investments. So I just wanted to make sure that that overall theme is heard, because I would love to work with everybody to figure out ways that we could increase our local investments so that we can get a huge increase in our federal investments.
Okay. Now, just, I like to compare apples to apples, not apples to oranges. So from a regional perspective, Philly County is the highest percentage-wise in contribution to SEPTA. Okay. The issue with respects to the bus revolution, it's a bold improvement. We understand the need. I mean, we clearly have some challenges with respect to our revenue stream, but it's based on the rollout and the implementation. It seems to be significantly dependent on individuals transferring to the Broad Street line and the Market Frankford line. My understanding, I'll be honest with you, I have not been on either one of those lines in quite some time. But based on what I hear, and based on what I see, we have some real challenges as it relates to individuals creating an environment that's not conducive to us encouraging people to ride either one of those particular lines, transit lines. And I heard your testimony reference it. I'm glad to see where they're adding additional levels of safety and secure as it relates to personnel. Guess some technology understanding with the entryways. We're going to make some adjustments to some of the entryways so you stop that folks jumping over the entryway and some of the other things. You also referenced the district attorney in your testimony. So the suggestion, I guess, is that we have to all be engaged in terms of safety and security, because at the end of the day, if we don't fix that, I don't think anything we do is going to help fix our system. You have to get people on public transit. I know Mike Carroll, in his role, is strongly encouraging people to get out of their cars, as an example. But now a guy like me, I can't get on the bike. But maybe if public transit were much more conducive alternative, maybe that would be something that we would look at. Do you all have those conversations on a consistent basis beyond budget time with all parties involved? How do we fix this issue with respect to public safety and environment on the transit system? To go beyond this.
Look, we're gonna fix safety and security together, right? It has to be addressed in Philadelphia to be addressed on SEPTA. We are collateral victims of the crime rates that are going on in the communities around us. SEPTA alone cannot solve gun violence or drug addiction. We have to all work together. And I think we all can, and we are working together. And we have to find ways to make those improvements. And so, I mentioned a few things that we're doing as far as safety is concerned. Let me just first address the bus revolution comment briefly, and I'm happy to go into more details if we would like to later. The first iteration of bus revolution did have a lot of routes feeding onto the subways, but we heard that people did not want to make that transfer. And so we did make those changes, and that the second iteration, which I'm again grateful to council, because many of the meetings have happened in your districts and you've made sure that people have gotten out and given us their feedback. We have revised that. And then as far as our subways are concerned, again, just as a reminder, less than 1% of crime happening on SEPTA as compared to what's happening in Philadelphia. And we are increasing our deployments. We are working with Philadelphia Police, of course. We are making sure that operators and police are in tune. And we also encourage everybody to download the Transit Watch app, because we can use help. So if you see anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, makes you feel unsafe, anything that needs to be cleaned, by downloading this free app, you can discreetly make these reports. We have 175 police officers that are on patrol, and they can only be so many places, at so many times. We have thousands of vehicles. We have hundreds of platforms and stops. And so by reporting something on the Transit Watch app, we can make sure that we prioritize where we are. We also have a fully staffed virtual patrol that has at their access 30,000 cameras. And again, we can make sure that we are, watching and making sure we are where we need to be. And so in working together, we will create a safer SEPTA. We'll create a safer Philadelphia, which we all want to see. And I think, those partnerships are starting and advancing, and we can strengthen those and working together to make sure, again, that this region is moving forward in the right way and safely and securely.
Okay. With respect to the vehicles, i.e. buses and I guess the subway cars, the elevated cars, whatever. Mm-hmm. The camera systems, I know the last time I think we had a conversation about SEPTA, the question, I think I may have asked a question about the cameras on the buses were basically recording, not any real time. Is that not feasible to have some real time cameras
We're
as a-
upgrading. Yeah, we're upgrading our, we do have some older analog cameras, but we are upgrading. We have real time, eyes. That's what the visual patrol is. That's not on a recorded basis, but then of course we can record and go back if we find out that there's an incident that we're not aware of. We can go back, and look at that. And that's why we record those cameras. But yeah, we're looking at upgrading all of our cameras, but our cameras are in real time. It's just, you don't always know. You can't have 30,000 eyes on every camera at every moment.
Well, you say they are real time, or they record, they're real time. Make sure we understand each other. The real time cameras, like say we did at the rec center, this unfortunate incident we had actually was real time and reported to the DIVIC, and it's going to cause basically the arrest of this individual that shot this youngster. Are your cameras in real time being viewed at the DIVIC, or is there a separate SEPTA reception area where the feed goes into?
There's access at DIVIC as well, and we have here in our control center on the 19th floor. You're welcome to come over. I know many of council has come over, particularly the newer members, which we really appreciated. And you can see all the real-time cameras, how they're being monitored.
That's good. All right, I'll see if these folks will let me out of this building. I like to step over it. They don't ever let me out of the building. All right, thank you.
And I mean this in a very welcoming way. I'd also love to ride the subways with you and the system with you if you ever wanted to do that as well. Be happy to do that.
Yeah, we were going to do that one day, and I think the pandemic happened or something. Yeah, if you get on the subway,
it's really a wonderful way to get around.
Take one of my constituent services rep with me. I'm sure it'll be a lot of questions asked of everything in the world. It's all good. All right. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gauthier.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, Leslie. I wanted to start by thanking you and your team for all of your hard work, and also commending your leadership during just unprecedented times. And I just also want to reassert that I and this whole council, we are your partners in dealing with these really hard issues. I'm also very excited at the prospect of us being successful on the RAISE grant application that we worked on together that would bring millions into Southwest Philadelphia for infrastructure improvements, both big and small. So super excited about that, and thank you for your partnership. I wanted to ask about the deficit that you talked about facing in FY25. You spoke broadly on how the funding shortfall could affect service. Are you all at the point where you're looking more closely and specifically at which transit modes and routes and initiatives this would most impact? What would get cut first? Have you looked at that? And obviously, we're pretty biased given that we're here in the city, but at a time when we don't have the level of volume in terms of people coming back downtown, particularly from the suburbs. I'm hoping that we are keeping equity in mind in keeping our Philadelphia transit lines fully open and operational for the people who need them the most. So can you please talk about that a little bit more? And can you also expound on any viable options that you see out there currently to make up the funding gap?
Sure. I appreciate the question. So the board made a very conscious decision with staff recommendations this year to concentrate on ridership recovery. We are laser focused on ridership recovery, safety, and security. Those are our three we touch all the time. And so in trying to get our ridership back as much as we can, we did not want to do a fare increase this year. However, in this operating budget and capital budget, you will see that all of the federal COVID relief funds run out this year. And so we want to start talking now. So we really appreciate your question, because it will take a long time to figure this out. These are very difficult questions. First of all, I just want to mention our efficiency and accountability program that I mentioned in my opening remarks. where we do anticipate to find $100 million in savings, which means that we are closing the gap, but the gap will still exist. And so we're looking at $240 million starting next July 1st, so July 1st of 2024. And we are looking at fare increases to make up 50 million of that, which would mean 30% fare increases. So for instance, if you're paying $2 right now per trip because you have a SEPTA key card, you will be paying $3 if we are unable to fill that gap. And
fare increases in the city across the system?
Across the entire system.
Okay.
Yeah. And 3 and 4, they go up by anywhere from, like about $15 increments per, monthly and weekly pass. On service cuts, we would look to find 120 million, and that would mean a 20% decrease in service. What that would mean in wait times, that is that, average frequency, headways when we have 15-minute frequent routes, they would go to at least 20-minute frequent routes. Out in the suburbs, a 40-minute frequency would go to 60-minute frequency. Our regional rail service levels would be reduced to hourly during weekdays and further reduced in off-peak, and weekend service may be eliminated altogether. So it is big. We can start talking about more details as the year goes on, but just to put that out there, that's what we'll be talking about next year.
So that's terrible.
Beyond terrible.
Will you be putting, is there some sort of like intergovernmental task force or body that can work on this? Because
yes.
What was just described doesn't seem like, we would ever want to have our public transit system face that.
Absolutely. Just so you know, we've already started talking to Harrisburg. I've spoken to Governor Shapiro about this. I've spoken to Secretary Monson, who's the budget secretary. They are well aware of what we're looking at. Just so that you know, other cities and transit agencies are facing this exact problem. In fact, not that we can get relief from this, but our gap is smaller than most other cities. Other cities are looking at anywhere from $300 million gaps to $1 billion. And some have $750 million gaps. So I didn't want you to think that this is just a SEPTA or Philadelphia issue. It's a national issue. And so we are in constant talks. We're in talks with the state legislature. We are truly hoping to get the state legislature to pass enabling legislation so that the counties here, including Philadelphia, as well as Montgomery, Bucks, Delaware, and Chester counties, will have options if they choose to raise revenues in different ways. We've been talking about this. Right now, even if you wanted to do that, you could not. And so we're hoping to get that first piece of legislation passed. And then, of course, it will be up to the counties if they want to raise revenue locally and spend it locally. We can talk about those options if that's something that you want to consider.
Okay, please sign me up to help. And then 2 quick questions before my time runs out. I know that we decided to pause the KOP route extension due to cost increases. So since we were planning to spend, hundreds of millions of dollars on that project in the upcoming fiscal year, can you talk about whether any of that money can be reallocated elsewhere in the system and where it can go? And then
I can answer very quickly. So
and then let me just get my last question out.
Sure.
Lastly, I ask you about trolley mod during every annual budget cycle. And so I wanted to sort of re-up that question because it's so crucial to West and Southwest Philadelphia. How much are we spending on trolley mod in FY2024? And what benchmarks do we expect to hit on that this fiscal year?
Sure. So very quickly on KOP rail money, we are putting $100 million into trolley mod. We're putting to help accelerate that program. We're putting money into regional rail car replacements, which we desperately need, and the majority of stops are within Philadelphia. And then we are also looking at freight separation. We are accelerating that on our capital budget. That will allow us to do eventually more frequent service to the airport, which will really help this region in big ways. We as a city, it's unfortunate that we only have every 30 minutes to the airport. And so we're working on that as well as freight separation up in Norristown. So we are working on that. As far as trolley modernization, we hope to have an announcement very soon. I hope you can all understand that real estate issues need to remain private until everything is final. But we have some good progress made on property that will allow us to modernize the system, to work on the new cars that have been already ordered and are on their way and fully funded. And I think it is going to be, I know we've been here many times on this trolley modernization property, but I think everyone will see that this particular avenue that we're going down right now is a win-win-win for everybody. It's going to improve a neighborhood that needs it and take some I would say blighted areas, maybe blight's not the right word, but areas that could use some beautification and activity and turn it into, a good neighboring property. So we're very excited about that, as well as allowing us to advance trolley modernization, which is a big deal and will help us make a large part of our system, up to 95% of it, ADA accessible after we're done.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Council Lady. Chair recognizes Councilman Phillips.
Thank you, Council President Clark. Hi, Ms. Richards. I'm City Councilman Anthony Phillips. I represent Philadelphia's 9th District. I would love for you to tell us more about crime and public safety and when it comes to SEPTA. Most recently, we have seen a decline in ridership in the city in SEPTA, and much of it could be attributed to rise in homelessness, addiction, and other crime along buses, trolleys, and trains. What I'm interested in learning more is that we have observed proposals around the desire to create high-speed ridership for SEPTA. However, one of the things that a lot of neighbors have been talking about is what is SEPTA doing to coordinate local, state, and even potentially federal support to get crime down around the SEPTA agencies. And for me, I think that I just want to see, one, what is taking place in terms of to try to make crime less of a reality on SEPTA, particularly in Philadelphia. And also, I want to learn more about from your standpoint, how can we make that a number one priority as we go into the new year?
Mm-hmm. So again, I just want to repeat that we are laser focused on safety and security on the system. We know it has a direct impact on our ridership. This budget is a 64% increase in safety spending since the 2 years ago. So we are spending over $58 million on security and safety. What that means is that we are increasing our transit police, which I've already talked about in my opening statements. It means that we've not only increased their salaries to attract more police and increased our numbers. We have that virtual patrol fully staffed. We have our SCOPE program, which helps with those experiencing homelessness, drug addiction, mental health on our system. We are looking at some AI, artificial intelligence, that's been fully funded by a state grant for security, by the way, and our work with Zero Eyes to identify guns on our system and to identify them early. We are working with the Philadelphia Police Department. We have joint narcotics operations that we are targeting at several entrances together on our system. We have a task force that's specifically looking at 15th Street, which has been a huge hotspot. As you know, it's right underneath City Hall. And so we're looking at the crime and disorder that happens around there. And we're also looking to police in other high crime areas. I had mentioned that we'd be adding 24 new transit police officers. We have new deployments specifically on the Market Frankfurt line to make our police officers more visible. Of course, what we're realized, and we tweak all the time, what we realized is when we put more officers on individual vehicles, it meant that they were less visible on our platforms, and people liked seeing them on the platforms as well. So now we're looking at how do we better balance that. Obviously, the Transit Watch app that we're working on as well. When we go up to Harrisburg and talk about all of these things, of course, we talk about what we're doing also on our crime and our safety and security issues. They are also very concerned. I would say, in addition to the crime that you read in the papers all the time, and I do want to emphasize 1% of the crime happening in Philadelphia is on SEPTA. So it is a small number when you look at what's going on in Philadelphia. It's also the antisocial behavior that we are seeing throughout the city. This is something that I think has been a result of the pandemic. We're seeing a lot of smoking. We're seeing drug use. We're seeing, urination, other types of just things that are not acceptable behaviors before the pandemic. All of a sudden, we're seeing an increase in these types of behaviors. So also interested in working with City Council, with the Mayor's Office and others to figure out how we can address those together. And we're open to any ideas, knowing that we can be good partners here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, one of the good ideas that I'm hoping to get more, if you could share more on, is oftentimes bus operators experience criminal activity or some sort of violence that happens within seconds of someone being on the bus, or just moments of them being on the bus. And then how do we, protect some of our, not only just the bus operators, but also just the people that are on the bus at the time? Are we coordinating quick enough with the Philadelphia Police Department to quickly get to that bus when there's a circumstance, so the bus operators can be safe? And I think that's something I wanted to hear more about.
Yeah, look, it's something that I'm also very concerned about. In fact, just in the last 3 weeks, I've been out to 3 different bus depots. I went out to Midvale, Southern, and Frankfurt to talk one-on-one with bus operators and what are they experiencing. We are continuing to have town halls. Some of the things that have come up is having roundtable discussions with our operators and our police on how better, we can, respond to things. I was asked by operators, can we have a police officer on every bus? Well, we can't. We don't have enough. And we have other parts of our system. So just letting them know what we can or can't do, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't discuss how we could have certain types of deployments, right? Of course, they can call right into their operators and into the control center if there's an issue. Anybody with the Transit Watch app who is on a bus, who sees anything, can report something that goes straight to our police dispatch as well. But there's direct communication from our operators to our control center, and they can deploy police response if that's necessary. They can also deploy social services responses if that's the best, But we are looking and trying to figure out what is the best way. I know our bus operators, again, are also seeing the results of increased antisocial behavior throughout the bus system, as well as in other areas of SEPTA. And so it's something we continue to talk about. And we would love to meet with you. We'd love to have you, if you want to talk directly to some of our operators, we would welcome that. And they would love to hear your ideas as well, and would love for you to listen to their ideas. And let's figure out ways we can work on this together.
No, absolutely. Let's work on it together. I think that's important. I certainly don't mind talking to operators, but one of the things I do recognize that I can have a conversation with the operators and they can come up with ideas, but the enforcement is certainly going to come from SEPTA. So you and your leadership. I just real quick, Council President, I just want to say just what I'm hoping that, just for the record, we could just get on my next question, talk more about is more for the second round is more around like how do you coordinate with local city police as well as maybe get regional community police type of officer, whereas there's officers assigned to check in with bus operators and subways in certain areas, and like we could just try to figure out whatever resources we have, that this is the Frankfurt officers, these are the Northeast officers, and they're assigned to these different routes, and to always constantly check in with the operators, and they know the operators very well. It's almost like a community policing model in the same way the SEPTA police model. But I just we'll save that question for the end. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Driscoll.
Madam Secretary.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I enjoyed our days working together in Harrisburg, and then
I did
I know you have a big job here, as you described earlier. I'm sorry my camera's not working for some reason, but my question is, like, how would increased investment in SEPTA impact situation in Philadelphia? Because I think we need to hear that.
Sure. I appreciate the question. And we are a big part of, regional economic activity here. But just so that I can break it down a little bit so everyone understands how we impact Philadelphia. Every year, SEPTA generates $1.84 billion in economic impact. That's just in the city of Philadelphia. So SEPTA operations and projects support 14,500 jobs for city residents. Of our just slightly over 9,000 employees, just want to remind everybody that 51% of SEPTA employees live in the city of Philadelphia. And those 14,500 jobs total $1.18 billion in earnings that then again get spent in the Philadelphia region. Since 2015, we've invested $1.5 billion in Pennsylvania companies, and $350 million of that has been spent just on companies located in Philadelphia. Obviously, those investments also create and support thousands of jobs. Over and over again, I can't say enough that cities and their transit systems, we are intrinsically linked. And the better the transit system is, the more the city is able to attract best talent, the more businesses want to be here, the more we are able to connect people to opportunities, which means their jobs, their quality of life. A healthier transit system means a healthier city. Every dollar, as I mentioned, that you contribute from the city leverages $69 in SEPTA's capital budget. And so I'm just very grateful for that. And I also just wanted, and I know we've talked about this in Harrisburg quite a bit, but just so that everybody in this hearing understands that every $1 billion of federal investment in public transportation supports 36,000 jobs. So when I talk about the fact that I want us to be like Chicago and Boston and DC, that is why. Because if we can get, and we could get $1.8 billion out of this federal bill, if we act fast enough and if we have the right local match, we could bring in 36,000 jobs for every $1 billion that we get. And we need that money to finish trolley modernization. We need that money to finish our state of good repair, which means, making sure that the oldest rail fleet here in the country, which is in Philadelphia, gets replaced. We can use that money to make sure that all of our stations on our subways, our trolley platforms, and many of our regional rail stations become fully ADA accessible. We have a lot of work to do here. Our state of good repair was just calculated, and for the first time, it's over $5 billion. I don't know if you remember last year when I spoke to you, it was around $4.6 billion. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands the reason for that is that we don't have enough money to keep up with the state of good repair needs. So every year we're losing ground on our state of good repair because we don't have enough money to invest. So I just wanted to emphasize that as well. So a lot of jobs could be created. We're already creating jobs. We're already spending money here, and we want to do an even better job of bringing more jobs to this region.
Oh, thanks. I think that's a really important component of the interaction here. I just also I think I'm sure you're doing this as part of the conversation. In 2026, Philadelphia is going to be on the world stage. It's the 250th anniversary of America. It's the World Cup. It's the Major League All-Star Game. You name it. If we don't shine in 2026, it's going to be devastating for the next 10, 15, 20 years. So when we're talking about our partners in Harrisburg and we're talking to our partners in the federal government, they want us to have the best celebration of freedom and democracy. Well, if they want that, they need to help us. And I think to the extent that we can help you articulate that to the federal government, please call upon us.
Yeah, we will. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. And those are the discussions. And, all eyes will be on Philadelphia, right, for the 250th birthday. It's an amazing, a sesquicentennial. And it'll be a wonderful time for us to shine. And trust me, everyone here at SEPTA feels that pressure, but we also welcome it because we know we can. If we get the funding situation squared away, we have the right team to make sure that Philadelphia is in the spotlight for a very good reason.
Well, thanks, Leslie, for your testimony, and look forward to working with you.
We are too.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilman Johnson.
Thank you, Council President. Good morning, Leslie. Always good to see you and your team. Want to give a shout out to my good friend, Wendy Harvey Green, who keeps me abreast of everything, all things SEPTA, as well as my good friend, Fran Kelly as well. Well, she keeps ducking these Zoom meetings, but when you do see them, make sure you tell them I said hello, as well as Pamela I see over there as well. So we thank them for your hard work and your dedication around SEPTA transit system here in the city of Philadelphia, as well as your work to continuously engage the communities as well as our districts around the SEPTA Revolution Plan, and like going back to the drawing board, listening to people's concerns and issues, and then reporting back on the progress in terms of how we move forward as we upgrade our system. And also just want to give kudos to my good friend Michael Carroll as well. Let's had a couple questions regarding the procurement process as relates to SEPTA around diversity and inclusion, and making sure that people have an opportunity to participate with the opportunities and the work that SEPTA is doing here in the city of Philadelphia. I know a recent report from the Economy League of Philadelphia talked about how household incomes in the city of Philadelphia only increased by, for African Americans, by 6%, and all other ethnic groups by 25%. And so for me, that just sounds the alarm that we have to make sure we're doing a deeper dive, and specifically focusing on providing opportunities for all. And so I know I have a doing business with the city forum that's coming up that SEPTA will be participating in, to show people how to do business with the city of Philadelphia and learn how to participate, as well as hopefully as a result be able to build generational wealth as we address the issue of poverty. But give us an idea of what your diversity and inclusion numbers look like for procurement, for vending opportunities, and also the various programs that you offer as it relates to allowing individuals to participate in the business opportunities that SEPTA offers.
Sure. Well, first of all, just to remind everybody, and the city of Philadelphia has joined us. We are active members in the Equity and Infrastructure program. We made our pledge, and we are really concentrating. And just so everyone understands, where this is different than a typical, DBE program where you try to hit certain goals or certain milestones, this is aimed at bringing in historically underutilized businesses as primes. And it's aimed at building generational wealth. And so we're very excited. We are one of the leaders in this. We are making sure that we have some small business set-asides that are helping disadvantaged business enterprises. And every time we get a new contract awarded through this program, that vendor is automatically a prime and then can compete for more work as primes. That means they, are not beholden to another company to give them work, which has been a problem, by the way, with parts of our program. I mentioned that we hired Emmanuel Murthel as our first Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer. The DBE program now will be under her direct oversight. And she is also making sure that the team is concentrating on those types of results. I'm very proud to say that last year, SEPTA spent $82 million with 65 DBE firms. That's a huge number, and it's one that we only hope will continue to grow. Just to give you an example of where we were before 2020, we were spending $18 million. It goes up and down every year. It's not always a gradual, but just to let you know how much we've grown in the last, and we will continue to be focused on those numbers. I also want to let you know that we have approximately 2,400 firms certified through our program as DBEs, and 258, over 10% of them, are based out of Philadelphia. So we're very happy to be giving them those types of opportunities. We do have a 13% goal that the federal government gives us for all contracts that use federal money. And we have committed to hitting that goal at least as a minimum with all of our contracts, whether federal money is involved or not. And so that's what we're working toward, and we've been hitting. And so just wanted to give you all of those parameters. Of course, we can fill in with a lot more details, but it's something I'm committed to, our staff is committed, and here in Philadelphia, we take it very seriously, and we're very proud of the work we've been doing.
Thank you. Can your team just provide, rather now or later on, specifically out of the contracts and the dollars that were allotted, that went specifically to an African-American owned company? Because I know a lot of times with the diversity and inclusion numbers, you have a variety of different categories, which is great. But just based upon this report, it shows that the households that are suffering the most, that's not getting the benefits of generational wealth and opportunities here in the city of Philadelphia, is African-American households. All other households has increased. Caucasians, $14,000, Asian Americans, $10,000, and Latinos, $7,000. This is between the year of 2010 to 2021. And so that was based upon a recent report. This had me zero-like focus on making sure that we address the issue of poverty and erasing that stigma that we have here in the city of Philadelphia. Is the number one big city when it comes to poverty. We're being intentional, and I do want to commend you and your team for hiring a DEI person, because that shows that you're being intentional about having someone to say, okay, here's your responsibility to dig down on these numbers and make sure that we're addressing this population of individuals that should have an opportunity to be at the table. But if your team could just provide me an information specifically around, okay, out of these contracts and the dollars allowed, this is the amount that are actually going to specifically African Americans, that would be helpful. Latino as well.
Yeah, we will break that down, and obviously we'd love to work with you on increasing those numbers, because the more brown and black owned firms that we have in our system, the more work we can give to them. And I do know that we need to do a better job at recruiting and getting Black and brown firms certified. So we'd love to work with you on that, and we are alongside you in those goals. I agree with all of those statistics that you just shared, and we would love to see more dollars and contracts going to give more opportunities to those historically underutilized businesses.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Keep up the good work, you and your team. Oh, and also I'll wrap up on this part. In the same spirit of my colleague, Councilmember Driscoll, any way that we can be supportive and advocating with you on the state and federal level regarding support. And as he mentioned, we have a variety of different events that will be coming up in the future. But I know we'll rise to the occasion the same way we did when the Pope was here, the same way we did when we won the Super Bowl championship, the same way we did when we did the draft, NFL draft, the same way we did when we hosted Made in America like we do every year on the Parkway. And so we're going to be allies with you in making sure that we shine again. So don't hesitate to reach out to us and let us know how we can be supportive. Thank you very much.
I can just tell you our team loves to be part of those events. When I came in here and I asked them what's their favorite part of their job, almost every single person had one of those events you just mentioned as something that they have loved in their careers. And so we look forward to working with you on that. We are Philly, right?
We always rise to the occasion, so I know that's
look forward to working with you on that.
Absolutely. Keep up the good work and take care.
Thank you, Councilman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Council President, and thank you so much, Leslie Richards and your team, for all of your great work and for the collaboration on some of the issues that we have spoken about and I've spoken about with your team. And I just want to give a shout out to Wendy, for always being responsive and for always answering the call. I wanted to get a few things on the record that I was able to speak with you all about previously and just make sure that things are moving in the right direction, particularly because of some of the communication, that we receive from the community, but also, from some of our partners in labor. So I'll start with the bus revolution. And I'm encouraged by the fact that you all have scheduled the meeting in Winfield specifically. But I will go back to what I stated previously regarding Bus Revolution. I do not feel that this process is culturally competent and inclusive of the community. I do think that you all are making strides since the last time we all met. But again, every time we come to the meetings, and I'll see what happens at the next meeting we have specifically for my neck of the woods on May 1. But the folks that are making decisions who are interfacing with the community, they don't look like the community. They don't look like Philadelphia. It's not very much diversity on those teams at all. And I say diversity relative to racial demographics, and also diversity of people who really have a full understanding of the cultural importance of SEPTA and what these routes have meant to the city for so long, since, it's been so long since we've had this sort of overhaul. So I wanted to start with Bus Revolution. If you could talk a little bit about that. But in addition, I asked previously if you all engaged the bus drivers in TWU regarding this process. And I say that because ultimately they will be the ones who are driving these routes. And they also know these routes very intimately. So if you could provide us with an update for that, that'll be helpful. And then I'll move forward.
Sure. So since we spoke last, Emanuela has begun as our Chief Equity and Inclusion Officer, and we specifically asked her team to take a look at our community engagement. So I thought that we were improving on that, and I'm happy to have her team reach out directly where you feel like we are having shortcomings. We did hear loud and clear, and you were absolutely right, and we appreciate you pointing it out. And we did design our public engagement efforts around the comments that we heard, specifically from you, Council Member Gilmore Richardson. It was. I'll be honest, it was hard to hear, but it was accurate. And we do want to be held accountable when we get things wrong, and we got that wrong. And so we have been going out and making sure, obviously, when there are seniors, you had pointed that out, that there weren't places for them to sit at certain locations. We made sure that that is more accessible and more comfortable. We also have been in tune with the teams that we're sending out. I personally will double check to see the makeup of those teams. I also will ask Emmanuel and her team to take another look. But she was pleased with the progress that we were making. But I'll make sure. Trust me, she's tough, and so she's going to want to get it right as well, just like I do. And on the bus revolution in general, we've been getting really good feedback. I personally had visited Midvale District right after our bus revolution team had been there to talk to the operators. So I know that those meetings are taking place. I also know that more are planned. We talk about outreach and we also talk about inreach. And we are definitely interested in hearing how our operators navigate the city, and they have very, very valuable input for us. So yes, they are part of it, but please, if you hear from anybody who feels otherwise, let us know. But we have been going out and talking individually to different depots and different groups of bus operators as well.
Sure. Well, that'll be great. And just please keep us updated on the progress. Like I said, I do keep up with the emails, and I responded to one, and Wendy was right on top of it. And so was Brahim from Councilmember Jones's office. And so the meeting is scheduled for May 1. I have rearranged my schedule to ensure that I could show up at that particular meeting so that I can personally see for myself from a firsthand perspective some of the changes that will be instituted as a result of some of these conversations. And I appreciate you checking in with the operators directly to ensure that they have a role in this process as well. Wanted to circle down to a workforce development issue really quickly before I move on to a few other things. There was a high school internship program that was run by SEPTA some years ago. I think it may have had some interface with Mansbaum High School. I'm not sure. But at any rate, that program is no longer in existence. I've spoken with you all about this program a couple of times, and have also touched base with TWU as well. And everyone is excited about the prospect of this potential program, particularly as a way to serve as a career connector for our young people who may want to go into transportation upon graduation. So can you talk about the status of that program and also how you all are working with the Career and Technical Education Office at the school district to ensure that you have a direct pathway and pipeline to either service as a bus operator and or other positions at SEPTA?
Sure. Look, we're working very hard as far as recruitment. And I know that we have been in touch with the school district as well as with the community college, as well as with the technical schools. We want to make sure that everyone knows that they can come to SEPTA straight from high school, and we have a variety of different opportunities. We want to make sure that there's a good fit. We've also extended resources with our HR folks to help walk people through what that process is, because sometimes you have to take a test. Sometimes you have to go through different applications depending on whether it's an FTA regulated position, FRA, rail regulated position, whether it is a different type of position. Again, there's lots of opportunities here. I will have my team follow up specifically with the program that you asked. I don't have details on that particular high school program, but I can tell you, we definitely want to have those connections. Anyone who is interested in working at SEPTA, we want to have conversations with them. We want to be the place where they want to work and get their questions answered. We definitely don't want them to not know how to apply for a job at SEPTA or not know the variety of different skills that we're looking for or all of the different opportunities. I really feel strongly that we have opportunities for every single person because there are so many different skill sets that are needed here, from IT to finance to operations to mechanics to management,
Exactly.
everything.
And apologies for cutting you off, but you hit
no, I get it.
You hit it directly. So even for fleet, we have automotive tech programs, and what the city has done is change some of the specifications for some of the jobs to directly. If you graduate from a CTE program, that is a direct sort of qualifier for you to be eligible for that position. Is that kind of work, meaning SEPTA, you will be the end user. The beginner user of this program is the school district CTE program and those students. And how do they get from their CTE program directly into SEPTA? That is what I want to see more of. And because you all do a good job as far as outreach around job opportunities, and we do share, but I'm talking about a direct pipeline where you all are working with the school district from step one as the end user of this process to getting the young people hired, particularly because you have so many openings. So I heard the bell. I will be respectful of the clock. I'll come back on the second round, wherein I just want to get a few things on the record regarding, we heard about potentially a change in the workplace violence policy, and how you all are ensuring that you are interfacing in advance of your negotiations in good faith with the union. And then also, I have to get my climate questions on the record as well. So I have those also. All right. Thank you.
We look forward to that. But let me just, before we end this round, just what you want, we want. So we look forward to working with you on those issues.
Great. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Lozada.
Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, Leslie, and your team. I also want to shout out, like everyone else, Wendy, who allows me to just be me and tell her everything I have to tell her without being super diplomatic, right? She lets me vent, and then kind of brings me back, and we go through resolving what my issues are. So I'm really grateful for her in these last few months that I've been here, and helping me get through the process. I just want to get on the record my concerns that I've shared with her. I have heard some of her responses, but I want to make sure that you understand, or that others understand, that some of our concerns are exactly the same as they are in other districts, right? Safety is one of the biggest things that community residents in the 7th Council District talk about when they refer to SEPTA. And it's no secret. I mean, you've met with many community residents several times, right? And so I guess my question is, how do we continue those conversations? I think that they kind of stopped, and I'm sure that everyone is kind of busy. There were some changes that SEPTA was able to make as a result of those meetings. There's still a lot of work to do. And so I guess my question is, how do we bring you back to the table to continue conversations, to respond to some of the concerns that community residents have? Many of the residents in the 7th Council District don't travel by car, right? They depend wholly on SEPTA, and they are oftentimes they have to use the elevator that's full of urine, with puddles of urine, or they have to get on a SEPTA cart that has folks who are suffering from addiction and who just kind of ride up and down from the beginning of the line to the end, and are real bold about it. And so how do we, my concerns are the same. Like I said, how do we work together to be able to ensure that residents who don't have alternative methods of traveling to and from work or to and from school, how do we ensure that they're safe on the trains?
Well, first of all, we want to work with you. We don't want anyone to have, to decide that they can only manage they know where else to go. Or, these are tough problems that we want to work with.
I'm having a hard time hearing, so I'm not sure if it's just me or everybody else.
Yeah, we're having trouble. Looks like you're muted for some reason. Yeah, your voice is altered.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're good.
Yeah,
now.
I don't know what changed here to do that, but something. Anyway, look, we want to work with you. I have been, I've ridden our system. I've walked around the areas of Kensington and Huntington and Tioga, and I've seen the challenges that are there. And I know working together, first of all, we want to be seen as partners. I was unaware that the community felt that those conversations have stopped, because I can tell you in the meetings that I've been, those issues have not stopped. I know our SCOPE program is very heavily involved in Kensington. I know we're working very closely with Mural Arts on their facility there, and getting people services as they work on artwork, and the Color Me Back program, paying people $50 a day to help beautify our system in that area. We'll continue to do that. I know recently, just in the last month, our police chief figured out new deployments for it's particularly Allegheny. We know that we had started to lose control of those stairwells and where people were gathering, and we had looked to improve that as well. So we're happy to have those conversations again. If you feel that they're stopped, let's make sure that we understand where they have. But I can tell you from my point of view, they have not stopped. And I know Wendy has been working with the community groups tightly. She's always briefing me as well where those conversations are. So I'm sorry for that disconnect. Trust me, we understand the challenges in that area, and we want to be productive partners in helping those issues. And so whatever it is that we can do, I know that there are frustrations there, but I also want people to understand that we can go in and, for instance, clean up the stairwells, clean up around the platforms and everything. The second we look away, the second that we don't have the personnel and the workforce to be there 24/7, it doesn't take long for it to look like we were never there. And so we really want to work. And I know there are other areas in the neighborhood that have those same challenges. It's not just on SEPTA property. So would love to work with you and others to figure out how do we do that? Because right now we just do not have the workforce, the law enforcement, the personnel to be able to monitor 24/7, unfortunately. Maybe we can figure out better cooperation with Philly police, with others who are in the communities to help with that type of enforcement. But right now, that's where a lot of our challenges are, and we look forward to working with you to figure out how we can be better there. You know what? Now I can't hear you.
You're on mute, Council Lady.
I'm sorry. Every time I turn on my camera, when Leslie freezes. So I just wanted to. I was just saying that I want to be a partner as well. So anything that I can do, please know that I'm available. But enforcement is absolutely a must, and I know that that's not a conversation that many want to have. It's not a conversation that people want to have, especially now during campaign season, but it's absolutely necessary, especially in districts like mine. And so, while we want to give people opportunities, while we want to connect them to services, we need to make sure that we're also looking at those who are trying to be responsible and who are trying to get to and from work. And so anything I can do to help, please know that I'm available. And then my other question was around the changes in bus routes. I know that while I was at Esperanza, Esperanza served as the community organization that connected community residents with the information of what was happening. I don't know if that is continuing to happen, but again, I want to be a partner. And so if there are changes, many people depend on the 47, the 56, the bus routes that get them from Center City up to the Alamy area, and there's a lot of senior citizens who will not be able to get to certain places if they don't know what the changes are. So I want to make sure that we're informing community residents. If there's not an organization like Esperanza that is your partner, that is helping to get information to community residents, please let me know. We can help identify another community-based organization or reach out to Esperanza to continue to do that work, as well as my office can share the work. We're out in the community every Wednesday at a different church, a different rec center or community center, so we have access to folks. I want to make sure that we're getting people the information they need. And then young people. I've talked to a lot of young people who say, you know, they don't know about the changes that are happening in SEPTA, and they rely on it to get to and from school. And so are we communicating with some of our youth ridership? How are we informing them of the changes, and how can we make them a part of the conversation?
Yeah, so look, we have everything out digitally as well as going out to group meetings. I've been really proud of the community outreach that we are doing, but trust me, I hear what you're saying. I hear what Council Member Gilmore Richardson was saying. We will reach out to make sure if there's other things that we can be doing, we will. But just to let you know, we have had pop-ups where we have a van that drives around and has meetings. We've had multiple meetings there. We've had in-person community meetings. I think we've had 11 in-person community. We've had 7 pop-ups. We've had webinars. You know, a lot of the young people are able to connect that way as well. And so we will make sure that everybody's aware of, you know, those, and they do get taped, I believe, so they could watch them. And I'll make sure that that's the case, you know, that they can watch them and watch that information on their own time if they can't make it while it's happening in real time. But please let us know, because we do want to reach out to all of our riders, including the young riders that you're talking to. So we are out there doing so much, but if we are missing people, I trust you that we are missing those people, and we would love ideas on how to reach them and how to interact with them. So any other ideas that you have, or where we could drive these vans out to, we could add some of those stops, or make sure that they are aware of other meetings that are taking place.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Council President.
I'm sorry, I'm multitasking. Chair, I think Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson for round 2.
Yes, I'm here. Thank you, Council President. Thank you very much. And thank you again, GM Leslie Richards. And I see you too there, Mike Carroll. Thank you both.
We can put Mike in the hot seat if you want.
Well, I do that all the time when I call him. So thank
Sure
you very, very much. I wanted to circle back to the issue relative to changes in policies relative to the workers, and specifically around the workplace violence policy. You know, we talk so much about, you know, sort of the safety of the system and what's happening across the system. And undoubtedly, you know, we have to ensure that our riders are safe and have the best experience possible on the system. But that also rings true for the operators of the system as well. And so, I don't know if you all received this information, or if you can just elaborate on this relative to any changes in the workplace violence policy, and why did that happen, and has the workers and or the union been consulted around that issue, particularly because you know that typically it's either the check and request issue as far as when somebody is onboarding in the system, or it's just the overall issue of threat of violence against workers. So has there been a change in that policy, and can you speak to that, and have everyone, you know, sort of been included in that process?
I think the issue that you're referring to, and please tell me if I'm wrong, because I've been talking to operators to get feedback personally on it, is that we do ask our operators to remind people that it's $250 to ride our bus if they don't have a SEPTA key card. Is this the issue that you're referring to when people come on the bus?
I think it's twofold. I think that's a part of sort of the challenge of interfacing with some people who are quote unquote fare evaders, but I think the overarching issue is the change in the policy relative to workplace violence.
Okay, I'm not aware of a change in policy.
Okay, so, can you just let me know? Can you look into it and just let me know if there's been any change to any of the policies, including the workplace violence policy for workers, and then how folks were consulted in that change, if it was a change, and if not, if you could just let us know, and you can send it in writing to the council president. He can disseminate it to us.
Just take a very quick minute to tell you that we have several committees where we meet with our union representatives, our frontline workers, and our safety experts. And we talk about a variety of issues. I also want to let you know that I have been to DC as well as to Harrisburg to talk to both our federal and our statewide representatives in upgrading assaults on our operators and on our frontline workers to be state as well as federal crimes, so that we can have a little more teeth in that and elevate that. I know that our operators have largely been in favor of that. In fact, all the ones I've spoken to have been in favor, but I haven't spoken to every single operator. But I know that they're appreciative of that, and we are looking to help out in that way. And I also know that when I've been going to talk to operators one-on-one at different depots, we have promised to come back and talk and figure out. And the way that I present it to them is I was like, when I come back, let's figure out 1, 2, or 3 things that we can work on together. I realize that there will be things that, we may not be able to work on together right away. I realize how frustrated, and trust me, what the operators are dealing with right now. I mentioned that antisocial behavior, but every time I'm given an example, and trust me, they can tell me what happened to them that morning. They can tell me just a day or 2 ago. I know it is. I know it's occurring. And I know it's occurring on a much more frequent basis than anybody has ever had. And so, again, I just ask everybody, if we can do anything as a group to help, as people are dealing with how the pandemic impacted them, how violence in their own neighborhoods or trauma that they're dealing with is impacting them. SEPTA wants to be partners there, because I do think that's a big part of it as well. We are just definitely seeing an increase in riders, not treating our operators in respectful ways. It's very hard to hear, and we are open to all different ideas. And just this weekend, I'll end with this. I was at a national conference with CEOs from across the country, and we were all getting together to talk about this very issue. We are all hearing very disturbing stories that our operators are experiencing on a regular basis. I'm sure we all can relate to the fact you have a really hard day, and then you got to wake up the next day and you're ready to do it all over again, right? And so it's difficult. It's causing burnout. For us, it's causing increases in absenteeism, which leads to unreliable service. And so, which decreases our ridership. So it's this cycle we want to work on. So we look forward to working with you, but I will look to see if there was any policy specific change, and we'll get back to you. But we are interested in operators' feedback, of course.
Okay, well, that'll be great. If you could just get back to us and let us know if there was any change, and how you all ensure that you're consulting with folks when that happens, that'll be helpful. Sure. I heard the bell. I just want to get this one on the record. Have you all engaged in a climate adaptation plan to understand how your facilities will be potentially impacted by climate change?
Look, we're very concerned with resiliency and how we work. Of course, we had historic floods just not too long ago, right? That impacted everybody. So absolutely, we continue with our solar initiative, getting clean energy, as getting our own energy, as well as installing rooftop solar panels. We look into zero emission, bus fleets. We know that every time, and it's one of the reasons that we are really concerned with our ridership. Because the best thing we can all do for our climate right now is get people on transit, get them out of single passenger vehicles and get them onto transit. It's one of the best things we can all do for our environment, and we take that very seriously as we work on that as well.
Okay, and then if you could just keep us updated on any additional climate adaptation work you all are doing specifically around your facilities and just infrastructure in general. I know this is an issue that will continue to come up, particularly, like you said, after we saw the flooding. And I know it typically happens in certain parts of the system, particularly around flooding, but also inclement weather, which we were sort of spared from this past winter. So I just wanted to get an update on your climate adaptation planning and how you all are seeking to go after potential federal dollars that could further help you. So thank you so much. Thank you, Council President.
We will do that. I'll just for another 10 seconds. You're more than welcome to come out and see our solar panel installations if you're interested. We're also happy to give you updates on the solar farms that we are working with out in a different part of Pennsylvania, of our stormwater management, and how we're preparing for battery electric buses, no emissions, as well as some fuel cell electric bus technology, and looking to make our bus fleet toward, the zero emission plan, which we are committed to, by the way. So we will get you all that information and definitely help to decrease our carbon footprint, as well as work on other environmental initiatives.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any other questions of this witness by members of the committee?
Yep, Council President.
Councilman Thomas. Yes, sir.
Thomas. Good afternoon. Thank you, Council President. Good afternoon, Leslie, Mr. Carroll. Just a couple things I wanted to get on the record before we move on. First of all, Leslie, I just wanted to take a couple moments to talk about school safety issues. Traveling to and from school for young people in the city of Philadelphia has clearly been an issue. And I just appreciate your team for being a part of the meeting that we held to begin to think about safe corridors and best recommendations as it relates to how young people travel to and from school. I just want you to talk a little bit about what's going on the SEPTA end as it relates to the arrival and departure of school, and what you all have planned to make sure that young people stay safe as the weather breaks and we continue to encourage them to get a quality education.
Yeah. First of all, I want to thank you for including us in that conversation. We're happy to help in any way we can. Obviously, we continue to talk to the school district, their law enforcement, as well as Philly police and our transit police are working together. We are very much aware as the warmer weather comes around, we're expecting more activity around our stations. And we want to make sure that everyone can get to and from their school and their educational needs in a safe manner. So that's what we've been talking about. We're also looking at our summer schedules as well, and where we need to complement the deployments from again, school district in Philadelphia, and where we also need to look at busy platforms, busy corridors, busy routes. So those are the conversations that are continuing. I can get a briefing from our law enforcement, from Chief Lawson, if you want specifics, but I know that those conversations are continuing from the meeting where you pulled us all together to have those conversations, and the detailed plans are being worked on.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I just wanted to get that information on the record before we wrapped up with this witness. One other thing I just want to communicate as it relates to a concern in this year's budget proposal, the mayor talked about adding free passes for city workers and for other disadvantaged communities. What are your thoughts on adding students to that list? Like, what does it look like to have students to be able to ride SEPTA for free? And thinking about young people who's involved in extracurricular activities, they often have to use 8 o'clock stickers or get a special pass for the weekend. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we have been working with the school district. Obviously, we also work with the State Department of Education, who funds that program. Right now, we have approximately 65,000 Philadelphia school students who use our system as part of their commute to and from school. We have extended for after-school activities when those passes are available. We can look at, weekend use, who might use them. We definitely, I should say, we have technology that we can extend some of those passes. I always assume that the technology on our key card can accommodate a variety of different things, and I'm not always right on that because it's tying into some older technology, so I will check on that. But if there are different needs, I know that we have extended the pass time for specific students that had other activities, and we can take a look at that if we're seeing that there are certain weekends where they need to use it. But it is a school pass, and the way that it works right now, the funding comes through the Department of Education at the state level. we are, happy to talk to them and see if we can provide more flexibility. I do applaud council and the mayor's budget right now in proposing the SEPTA Key Advantage for 30,000 of the city employees. What we have found from the employees that are already receiving free transit, they love it. Not only do they love it, they're very appreciative of their employer, and they are using the system more often. In fact, we're seeing that they're taking multiple more trips every single month. And sometimes it's on weekends and sometimes it's after work. And they're using all city resources in a different way as well, because now they have this free pass on our system. So really appreciate the mayor and city council considering this and giving that free transit use to all city employees, as well as low income, which is desperately needed, especially as we work toward a more equitable future together, and making sure that those with the lowest income levels, get the transportation that they need. So we'll continue to work on that. Again, we're open to talking about different ways that students need to get around and how we can support that. I'm also more than happy to reach out to the state, the Secretary of Education, as well as the governor's office, if that's helpful.
That's great. And hopefully you can make sure you keep us in the loop as it relates to that communication. My last question, and you know what? No more questions, because you already spoke about this earlier and I don't want to be repetitive. Thank you, Council President. Thank you. Thank you to all the entire panel for all the work that you do and the service you provide to our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Any additional questions by members of the committee for this witness? There being none, I want to thank you very much.
I'm sorry. I have some questions. Is that okay?
Yeah, your name didn't come up. I'm sorry. Oh, well, hold on, one councilman, 1 second. Ms. Richardson, real quick,
Sure.
Can you provide, and you may have this and I just haven't seen it,
Sure.
A list of where, or a map where all of the meetings, the outreach meetings have been for the proposed changes? We want to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to participate in the process.
I know you're running short on time, and I know that there's
Not
other
right
people to testify, but I just want to. There's lots of them, so I will make sure you get this list. These are all the meetings that we have held second time, and we will map them out for you as well.
Yeah, list sometimes it's not relative if you.
I appreciate someone who wants to see it spatially. Yes, I am a spatial person myself. So yes, we will get it. And we do have that map. It does exist, and we'll get that over to you.
Yeah. We just want to make sure that every section of the city had an opportunity to participate. If people choose not to come to the meeting, it's not much we can do.
And look, if you see holes, or if you see areas where you feel that there need to be meetings, please let us know.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you. Chair recognizes Councilman Phillips.
Thank you, Council President. Just had two quick questions real quickly. SEPTA is now in the process of revamping its fare collection system, but will the system make it easier for riders to of necessity to assess the public transit system? And then also, so how does SEPTA attend? Well, we talked about the maintenance issues on personnel and so forth recently, but what is SEPTA doing to attract students? Well, I'll hold on that question. As part of the bus revolution, does SEPTA plan to reduce the number of bus stops on its city routes in order to reduce travel time? And will this be at the expense of senior citizens and people with disabilities?
Well, we never want to do anything at the expense of senior citizens or those with disabilities. I mean, that is a big part of our mission, making sure that they can get around. So that's why these outreach phases are really important. That's why we had the initial first phase of getting out and listening to people, and then this second phase. And again, we want to thank everybody for helping us do that. I do want to as we get this map out to everybody of where the meetings have been, again, please get back to us if anyone in your district or you're hearing about any groups that have not had a chance to provide input, because we want to hear from them. I wanted to get to your SEPTA key question. Yes, this new iteration is going to have better options for people to pay. They're going to be able to use their smartphone. They're going to be able to use their credit card directly. They're going to be able to use their watches if they want to. They're going to be able to pay in a variety of different ways. We're making sure that it's equitable as well. So those who don't have credit cards, for instance, they will still also have many options and where they can purchase passes, how they can directly pay on vehicles. But it's all about flexibility this next go around. We know that we ran into some big challenges with the last iteration of SEPTA Key, and we are working to provide that flexibility so that it will make our system even more accessible to more people and make it easier to use. So we are committed to that.
And last quick question, Council President, I just want to ask, as we know in the past, SEPTA has had a lot of, issues with the local in terms of there's been some camaraderie, but there's also been concerns where there's been strikes. What is SEPTA doing this year to ensure that there isn't a strike in the near future to work with the local to ensure that their needs are met?
So we've already started talking. I'm a big believer that communication is key. So we're talking about issues now. We've already opened up those communications. Several meetings are happening on a regular basis. And we hope that, we can work through things. I can tell you, as I hear more and more from our operators and the challenges that they have, we're trying to figure out, I can see that people aren't as interested in overtime as they were before, but we also see people calling out and absenteeism being a real issue. So we want to have productive conversations on how can we improve quality of life of our operators and how can we work on issues that don't allow us to run as reliable service. I believe our operators want SEPTA to be the best it can be. I know our management wants SEPTA to be the best that it can be. And we can't do it without our frontline workers and without our union workers. And so I'm really hoping that the conversation is framed in that way, where we can all be working together. And of course, we want to avoid a strike if at all possible.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilman. One more time, any additional questions by members of the committee for this witness? There being none, I want to thank you very much again for your testimony and your participation. Look forward to continuing our budget process, and hopefully we'll wrap up on time, on budget, as constitutionally mandated by the city charter of the city of Philadelphia. All right, thank you.
We support you in that, and we're rooting for you.
All right, thank you. Mr. McDermott, our next witness is?
Our next witness is Water Commissioner Randy Heyman.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Good afternoon.
It is appropriate that you have a background that shows a whole lot of water. And it looks like it's clear water.
Exactly.
All right, thank you. Thanks. Good talking to you. Yeah, Commissioner, when you're ready, you can proceed with your testimony.
Okay, I gladly will. Good afternoon, President Clark and members of City Council. I'm Randy Heyman, Commissioner for the Philadelphia Water Department. Joining me today are Lawrence Yangley, Deputy Water Commissioner of Finance, Benjamin Jules, the Deputy Commissioner of Operations, as well as other members of our PWD leadership team. I'm pleased to provide testimony on Philadelphia Water Department's fiscal year 2024 operating budget. I'm honored to be here today representing the 2,000 employees of the Philadelphia Water Department who work around the clock to ensure the delivery of safe, high quality, and reliable drinking water and the treatment of wastewater and stormwater to protect our rivers and streams. As you are aware, the Water Fund is an enterprise fund of the city and is comprised of revenues generated through charges to our customers. The Water Department's operating budget is a component of the Water Fund, and it is this operating budget for which the testimony is being provided. The proposed fiscal year 2024 water fund budget totals $536,234,875, an increase of $56,221,953 over fiscal year 2023 estimated obligation levels. This increase is primarily due to Class 100 increase to labor to provide for, among others, labor agreements, regulatory compliance, and transfers of capital positions to the operating budget. Class 200 for an increase for permit compliance and major maintenance costs at the plants. Class 300 for an increase in chemical costs. And Class 800 for an increased payment to capital funds. The Water Department is facing significant challenges. Inflation is one of the most pressing factors in our needs for more revenue in fiscal year 2024. Operations and maintenance costs have increased and are expected to increase further. For instance, the cost per ton for chemicals used in water treatment has risen in fiscal year 2023 as much as 142% above fiscal year 2022 levels. Chemical costs are beyond our control and alone add tens of millions of dollars to our annual operating budget. Likewise, the cost of electricity and natural gas used to power our treatment plants and pump water to residents is increasing, with costs projected to increase by nearly 11% for electricity and 19% for gas in the next fiscal year. These are costs again that we cannot control. When it comes to the family-sustaining jobs at the Water Department, the city has negotiated wage labor increases of 3.25% that will go into effect in fiscal year 2024 per the labor agreements. Along with wages, pension, and benefit costs are projected to increase from $143.8 million to $158.2 million in fiscal year 2025, a 10% increase, adding over $14 million in new costs to the annual budget. Debt service, which supports crucial infrastructure investments, is projected to increase by over 26% over the next 2 fiscal years, adding over $55 million to the annual budget. The chemical spill that threatened our Delaware River drinking water supply in March truly drove home for every resident of the city the importance of never taking clean water for granted. While we kept our water safe and the spill was never detected in our water, the efforts to respond to that crisis required significant time and resources. That event also made it crystal clear how important it is for the department to address aging facilities and potential failure points and increase the rate of emergency repairs and replacements. Fortunately, our long history of planning for critical improvements has the department well positioned. Currently underway is a 25-year water revitalization plan, representing billions of dollars in local infrastructure investment and jobs. This plan spans 400 projects. It is necessary to maintain clean, reliable water in Philadelphia in the coming decades. It will create new strengths in the system and increased flexibility and redundancy, allowing us to better face threats ranging from climate change to chemical spills. The department is also currently working on an update to our wastewater plan to provide long-term direction for improvements to the 3 water pollution control plants, pump stations, and other components of the wastewater system. The Green City Clean Water Program, established as part of the 2011 Consent Order and Agreement, also known as the COA, with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, is now in year 12 of a 25-year implementation schedule. To date, more than 800 green infrastructure sites in dozens of neighborhoods have resulted in the reduction in annual combined sewer overflows that exceeds 3 billion gallons. CSO pollution, there's CSO pollution that never reached a river or stream in the city of Philadelphia. When considering our linear assets, sewers and water mains, a significant proportion of Philadelphia's system will reach the end of useful life by 2050. PWD is increasing the amount of water mains and sewers targeted for replacement or renewal each year. To fund this work, billions of dollars in additional infrastructure investment will be required in the coming years. We are pursuing full court press when it comes to securing all available dollars from state and federal sources. As was announced during President Biden's February visit to our Belmont treatment plant, the department also signed a $341 million low-interest loan master agreement with the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act, WIFIA. The first loan closed for $19 million. Over the next 3 years, additional funds from bipartisan infrastructure law will continue to flow to Pinvest for the distribution to utilities and municipalities. A total of $1.2 billion, including over $500 million already appropriated to Pinvest in the last 2 years, is expected for water infrastructure. We will continue to seek Philadelphia's share of this funding, and we have no shortage of worthy projects ready to implement. However, the department has been informed by Pinvest that under their current methodology for determination of whether an applicant qualifies for grants, Philadelphia does not qualify for any grant funding to access bipartisan infrastructure dollars. While low-interest loans are invaluable, providing funds for projects will be crucial. The lack of grant funding for Philadelphia, which serves some of the poorest communities in the nation, was a central focus of the department's testimony this March before the U.S. Senate. Additionally, the city is working with Governor Shapiro's office to address these barriers. The department remains firmly committed to water affordability. To date, there are approximately 46,000 customers benefiting from our income-based water billing assistance programs, including the Tiered Assistance Program, TAP, the Senior Citizen Discount, and last year, the department and water revenue worked to help Philadelphians receive nearly $14 million to pay off water bill debt through the Low-Income Household Water Assistance Program, created by the state using temporary COVID funding. We are currently backing efforts to create a permanent federal safety net program modeled after this. In 2022, we introduced new policies that greatly reduced the number of customers eligible for payment-related water shutoffs. And we are continuing to work with the administration to fine-tune these policies to increase outreach customers facing shutoff or who have growing debt. In closing, I'd like to thank the department's workforce, whose efforts 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, keep the water running, sewers clear, and other waterways clean, and contribute to an improved quality of life for everyone who lives, works, and visits the Philadelphia region. This concludes my testimony. Thanks again for your time today, and I, along with staff, are happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for always getting back to any inquiry we have. Your response is duly noted. We really appreciate that. Too frequently, we don't have that environment in certain levels of government, but you've always gotten back to us, and we appreciate that. Let me ask you a question. I'm going to take my city council hat off. I'm going to ask these layperson questions. So you are proposing increases in water rates 11.7 FY24, 8.3, and 25. That would represent approximately, and hopefully, those rates don't come into play from the citizens' perspective. But I understand you need to ask. Well, how much would that represent, if granted, in terms of revenue to the water department?
Okay. I'll ask Lawrence Langley, our finance deputy.
This is Lawrence Langley. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for Finance. Mr. Council President, thanks for the question. For FY24, that will represent 80 million in additional revenue.
Okay. And in FY25, the 8%.
For FY25, that will represent around 62 million additional revenue. But there is a presumption there that the 80 million that we will get in FY24 will also be received in FY25. Added to that, 62 million because FY25 will be cumulative.
So you get 80 and then you get another 60.
Yes,
right?
that's how the model is. Yeah.
$140. All right, so that's 140 in additional revenue. That's best case scenario, which probably won't happen. I'll acknowledge that. And then you are asking us for an additional 56 million in general fund revenue. For 24.
For 56 million, this is a budget. This is the appropriation budget for FY24. The revenue we are requesting is also needed to fund this budget.
All right, I'm just trying to understand. The rate increase represents around 140 million, and then this 56 million total increase is what? Is that a request for additional $56 million? Additional.
The 56 million we are requesting is additional expenditure. The 80 million we're requesting in FY24 is additional revenue. So the 56 million is just for the water department. There are other departments that are funded by water revenue. The total water revenue, water fund request increase is about 78 million for FY24. We have the finance department is funded by water revenue. Fleet department is funded by water revenue. The Water Revenue Bureau is funded. So the total funding increase for water revenue in FY24 is about 78 million.
And that money flows to other departments beyond the water department.
Yes. So the 80 million we are requesting in revenue is also to fund this budget that we are submitting today.
Okay. So is that contribution reflected, and maybe I should be asking the budget director, that reflected in the contributions to those departments that you fund? Like you're saying, the additional departments that money, that revenue that's generated as a result of the increase, is that reflected in the budgets of the other departments that you're suggesting or for that you're saying are funded out of these revenues?
Yes.
Is Mr. Carroll, you playing the role of budget finance director / budget director today, or who?
I would never assume that, but we can certainly get.
Who is that, Ms. Maynard? I'm just trying to understand the flow of money. If there's other departments that are receiving revenue from this particular increase, I mean, I would think that it should be reflected in those departments' contributions also. I don't ever recall seeing a contribution coming from the water department in those other budget requests.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sabrina Maynard, Budget Director. So we have, there are sections in other departments' budgets that are water fund funded for like water fund related services. And we do interdepartmental or interfund transfers to reflect where those are. So we can get you the details on sort of where those break out, if that would be helpful. Because I know sometimes it's hard to just talk it through, but we can show kind of where that breaks out by department, if that's helpful.
Okay, you said that kind of fast. So
sorry. We can provide some detail in writing for sort of where things show up in different departments and how we do interfund transfers and where that shows up.
So can you provide that to us?
Yes.
Because I don't want the commissioner and his team taking the heat for other people's money. You know, I mean, on the surface, it looks like there's a significant amount of money flowing towards water, and without a sense that that money goes to other departments. So can you lay that out in a memo back to the committee, referencing how that flow of money goes to other departments? And then as we analyze the other departments, we can take into the account that this revenue stream is beyond their budget requests, is coming to those particular departments.
We're happy to lay out the water expenditures in other departments. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. With respects to your employees, one, I got a question. You all are asking for a change in employees from capital, from general fund to operating to capital, I guess it is. Employees from capital program to operating budget. One, I need to know why that is, and is that an increase in contributions of revenue from the city and increasing your budget? And then I want to ask you about the current vacancies that in earlier conversations about retention and attraction of employees, we noticed that you were pretty high up on the tier. But here you referenced 585 unfilled positions, but you're asking for additional dollars for 105 positions, but yet we haven't filled the nearly 600 positions. So why are you asking for an additional 100 and assuming that that appropriations from the last fiscal is in place? Why are you coming and asking for additional money for 105 when we haven't even hired the 585 people?
Okay. Go right ahead, Lawrence.
Let me just make budget-wise, what we do is the positions that are requested, some of the positions are dedicated for set specific tasks. Right. And so what we do at the budget level, we look at your vacancy, and all of the vacancies were funded at 25%. So all the 435 vacancies plus the 105 vacancies that are requested, the new ones, they are all funded at 25%. The reason we do that from the budget perspective is that you're not going to fill all these vacancies. Therefore, we got to discount these vacancies. So because they are there, does not mean the money is just in the budget. And for the capital movement to operating, we understand that this was a city mandate that within 10 years, we should move all of the capital position from a capital budget to operating. So we're about midway in that transition. So every year we move from a capital to operating.
Is that causing us to spend additional dollars?
It's of course,
why is it increasing fund?
It's increasing the operating dollar. It's just moving money from capital to operating. Why it increases the operating dollars, it decreases the capital dollar. At the end of the day, we are still going to pay for it, but it's just the manner in which we are going to pay for it.
Okay. So getting back to the 25% positions as it relates to the 585 and the 105. So in reality, there is never the likelihood that what you're basically telling us that you're not going to fill the 585 unfilled positions based on you believe that there's going to be a 25% of that. Is that my understanding?
Yes, we believe that we fill about 25% of those positions.
So why are we carrying the number of 585?
The reason is that each of these positions, they have separate titles. So therefore, if you want, say, an account clerk, another department wants an equipment operator, you can't just net them off because they are of different title for different tasks. So we carry all of them on the budget. What we can do is we know that you're not going to fill them. So therefore, we will just take an allowance, say we do 25% funded of those positions.
Okay, but that's not answering my question. Why are we carrying in these positions that, and I'm not unless you're telling me that a particular category is likely or one is possibly being able to be filled. I'm just trying to get a sense that we know
I think
75% of these positions are never going to be filled.
If I may add, I think there's the possibility,
we're
keeping it there, as a placeholder because there's a possibility that we will be able to fill it, but mathematically, as far as the number of people that can be put through the process to be hired and our ability to find individuals who fit that category, we may not fill it, but we're keeping it on the book because it is a position that is needed. And if we are able to fill it, we would have to have it in position versus have to go back and ask to open up a new position and reopen it again. So,
but you would have to come back and ask for additional money because you're telling me you only got 25% of those funded appropriated, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's
like a no. Go ahead.
No, I think Mike Carroll wanted to come in. Yeah, let me just end. We do this thing based on our past experiences to say, based on our past experience, this is what we think you will be able to fill. On the department level, our target is to have 12% vacancy rate. So currently we have 18% vacancy rate. So most departments I know of, they always have vacancy at the end of the year. So our target is 12%. We are 18% now because we are having some hiring difficulty. So we believe that we will be able to do that. However, we think we will reach the 12%. So we put this provision so that we cannot overstate the budget.
Okay. All right. I just, as I said, that's why I took my council person hat off and my lay person, and I'm looking at these numbers and I don't understand it. And I got to admit that city council, we hope to hire, and we always anticipate being able to hire a full complement, but particularly since the pandemic, we haven't been able to do this. But this is something practice been done in government, and it's not just water; it's all departments. You guys carry these positions. But I never knew that you anticipated only a 25% closure rate in terms of actually.
Well, the other side of the coin, as I said, as far as trying to hold a space, is that a lot of the positions, there's a regulatory necessity that we have it, like with the lead and copper rule. Has that lead and copper rule is changed, there's certain positions that we're going to need so that we can meet the regulatory mandate as far as the number of pipes we have to review or the maps that we need to create.
But based on the earlier conversation from your finance, it suggested that there was never the likelihood that you're going to fill beyond 25%. But I'm not going to belabor the point. I think I'm just trying to make these numbers work. Just,
we try not to over budget.
That's a good thing.
Yes,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I appreciate that a lot, particularly when it's ratepayers' money. When you're asking for additional dollars from ratepayers, that's real money, versus appropriations for staffing levels that we're never going to meet. One last question. Been getting a lot of calls from all kinds of different people about this issue, about just what do they call it, the tap into the hookup to the water system or the tap to the water system. I mean, an ordinary number of calls about, I'm ready to proceed with my development. I can't proceed because I'm not able to tap into the city's water system, be it sewer or water line service. Is something going on outside of the norm? Because, I've been here for a long time. I've never gotten this level of inquiries or other people about the inability to be able to tap in and get on the system and actually start.
Some of it is having the supplies necessary to make the taps. But I want Ben Jewell, our director of operations. Ben, can you address that?
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Council President Clark. I'm Ben Jewell, Deputy Commissioner of Operations for Philadelphia Water Department. We are aware of a significant backlog in large connection requests, and we've been impacted on a couple different levels here. When the tax abatements changed at the end of 2021 into 2022, we saw a massive increase in building permits issued by the city. There was a greater than fourfold increase in permits issued that calendar year. And since that time, we've seen, development move forward at a rapid rate. We've seen almost a 57% increase since that time in the number of connection requests that we've been receiving. At the same time, obviously, we've been hit by a couple headwinds as a result of COVID, including staffing shortfalls, difficulties in procuring materials, increase in costs, delayed supply chain issues, and we've been, working diligently to adapt and do our best to provide the highest level of service that we can. And at the same time, we've really been working to ensure that the development community is receiving clear communication from us, and we're setting realistic expectations for that. So, we have been working with our public relations unit to ensure that our public-facing message is clear. We've been trying to message to the development community that there is a long lead time, that we are aware of that, and we are doing our best to work that down, but also make sure that folks who do need these connections in order to allow their facilities to open, understand how the process works. We've been really trying to make sure that those folks understand that purchasing a permit is different from requesting the connection. And we continue to update how we deliver that message and make sure that message is very clear. And we're in active communications about that. We have had some issues with material procurement. Some of that has related to delays in delivery. Some of it's related to delays in contracting, price increases, and needs to extend contracts. We're working through those issues as well, actively with the procurement department and with our vendors. We're also, working to augment how we're utilizing our staff. So during the winter months, we go to offset 12-hour schedules to deal with increased water main breaks. During those times, it requires us to choose whether we're going to respond to a break or whether we may do a connection that was scheduled. At the very, very coldest parts of the year, we had significant impacts from breaks, and obviously those are taken priority, where we want to ensure, one, that no one's impacted by a water main break, and two, that everyone has water service. So this winter luckily was not as bad as some have been. So that was less of an impact on us. But one thing we did do was we extended that winter schedule, we call it, into the spring months in order to try to work down the backlog of new connections. And as well, we've been working with staff to increase work on the weekends to allow some additional working hours to help work through a backlog of these new connections. We've been working on communication directly with the developers on a project-by-project basis, so they understand where they are in the queue and when they can expect us to provide that service. And as well, been working with staff to see if there's an opportunity to augment our in-house personnel with contract personnel, if that makes sense from a business perspective. So, we've heard the message from developers, from council. We're taking this opportunity to kind of reflect, adapt, and emphasizing constantly that we're providing a service, and we need to be cognizant of the needs of those people to whom we're providing a service, and also that we're providing that service fairly to all people who find themselves in a schedule of work, waiting for their turn to be provided connections.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. That's the first I've heard about, and I understand the issue we're permitting because of the 10-year tax abatement changes, because I know there were an inordinate amount of people trying to get in at the last minute before the tax abatement. Actually, you could have stopped there and I'd have said, okay. We would have taken the heat and kept it moving, right? All right. I got you. All right. Well, thank you for that explanation. I appreciate that. Chair, and I apologize to my colleague for this long line of questioning, but I just had to make some sense of these numbers here. I'm just trying to get my head around why are we doing a bit what we're doing. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank you, Council President. It's all good. I think we all have the same type of questions, particularly the communication that I've sent to the Water Department previously, particularly after President Biden's announcement. So thank you very much for taking it down to the layman's questions. And Commissioner Hayman, thank you very much for always being so responsive and for answering the call every single time we call and have a water issue and or water emergency. In the same line of questioning as Council President, though, have you all ever, from the Water Department's perspective, has the Water Department specifically requested to finance to use funding from the inflation reserve to address some of the material costs that are driving up, your expenditures? I know you said the cost of materials have gone up significantly since COVID. Have you all made a direct ask of the finance department and the finance team relative to using the inflation reserve funding?
So, yes. We had talked to City Council before, and we were asked to make an inquiry, and we did make an inquiry to the finance department. And basically, they're saying that they're not able to do so, with it being that for us to receive money from them would possibly lower our rating, our bond rating, and could possibly be in violation of the covenants. And so, but I will leave that to the finance department to explain. I don't want to speak for them.
Thank you. I see Sabrina there. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. Yep, Sabrina Maynard, Budget Director. So we've had a number of conversations about this, and we're really deliberate in keeping the water and general funds separate and not intertwining them in any way because they have separate bond ratings and they're reviewed separately by rating agencies. And so intertwining them would have negative impacts on both. It would hurt the general fund and it would hurt the water fund. We have some detail and sort of the rationale in writing that we'll forward to the chair after this hearing to share the details, some of the weeds on this. But we have been in touch with the commissioner and his team, and we've talked to bond counsel, and it's been pretty clear that we have to keep the general fund and the water fund separate.
And thank you for that response. But I think my question is, and the overall question is that, then what do we have that inflation reserve fund for if that we can't use it during the time when inflation is driving up our material cost?
Yeah.
Then what is it for?
Yeah, we've been really deliberate about using the inflation reserve funds to support general fund departments related to their inflation needs, while also taking care to make sure that we're keeping the water fund and the general fund separate, as has been advised by our lawyers.
Well, let me ask you a question. If that's the case, then why are we allowed to then give them money for their pension costs?
I will share the memo that has the details from the lawyer after the hearing with the details. I'm not an attorney. I don't want to pretend to I don't want to get into the details because I'm not super. It's not my area. So I just want to make sure that I get you the documentation after the hearing that outlines that information.
Okay. Well, specific to those questions, if you could just give us a response in writing relative to those questions, in addition to the pension question. Because that doesn't make sense to me. It's that old school saying, what's good for the geese is good for the gander. I don't get it that time. So if you could give us something in writing that explains that and how, for whatever reason, assistance around pension doesn't constitute an issue with the bond rating, yet allowing them to utilize inflation reserve funding for an issue around material costs going up because of inflation is not an appropriate use, then I would love to see that information in writing.
Yes, we'll be happy to provide it.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Sabrina. Commissioner Hayman, I just wanted to go back and talk about some things that I read through in your testimony. But in the department's testimony, you all stated that the Water Department will focus on energy reduction and the development of alternative energy generation, thereby lowering our carbon impact. Can you talk to me about some of the specific strategies that the department is actually exploring to really reduce your footprint?
Okay. I'll ask Mark Camerata, who's our commissioner. Assistant Commissioner or Deputy Commissioner on the planning side, if you could go on some of the sustainability issues.
Hi, good afternoon. Yeah, Mark Camerata, the Deputy for Planning and Environmental Services. We have a couple different efforts related to our utility strategic-wide energy plan that really looks at how we think about energy with 4 overarching goals. So we try to kind of stabilize our energy footprint by always thinking about increasing energy efficiency at all of our facilities. We are focused on reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030. We do always continue to pursue renewable energy generation and resource recovery at some of our facilities, and I can give a few examples of that. And what we do is we try to maintain and reduce energy costs. So we have a couple efforts right now, particularly cogeneration plant at the Northeast Water Pollution Control Plant, where we take digester gas and we use it for, we collect it and use it as an energy source. So we try to recover what we produce on site using some technology to do that. We have a solar array down at the Southwest Treatment Plant where we harvest solar. It's a small fraction of our electricity usage, but it does offset some of our energy needs. We collect airport de-icing fluid at the Southwest at the airport, and we feed it into our digesters at the Southwest plant, and it increases some gas production that we end up harvesting and utilizing for energy. And we have our long-term contract with Synagro at the Biosolids Recycling Center, where we take a lot of our biosolids and we produce through heating, we pelletize it and make it a renewable resource. But a lot of the energy that we kind of create is used in that thermal drying process. As we continue to invest in all of our capital projects moving forward, we're constantly thinking about how we can add energy efficiency and even some energy generation. And in particular, we've been working directly with Philadelphia Gas Works on thinking about renewable natural gas options as well and seeing if there's any area of exploration there as well.
Okay, well, I heard the bell and I will be respectful of the clock, but you did bring up one thing around capital projects. And I just wanted to put on the record relative to your capital projects, what challenges do you think your department will face around securing funding from our state and or our federal partners for your capital projects? Like, what changes do you think we have to make in order to ensure that Philadelphia can really be competitive in receiving our fair share of some of the infrastructure dollars, in addition to some of the other announcements that have already been made? Because you brought up capital, so I had to go there. Because the projects are good, right? But if we can't sustain that work, we won't meet the goal. We won't meet the year. And they're small, right? In nature, we want to expand some of that work.
Well, I would say, we'll go right ahead. I was just going to say quickly that, we're having the conversation we said about Pinvest so that we're able to get the actual grants, 0% versus the loans. But the other thing, when I testified before the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee recently, they talked about BIL established or extended multiple other water, wastewater infrastructure funding programs that have not been appropriated yet, and so have not received appropriations. So we can continue to work on this. We are involved in a number of the water think tank organizations across the country, and that allows us to work as a group instead of just one, which is more powerful as far as making push for the monies and to get information. One other thing, we have the EPA's mid-size and large drinking water system infrastructure resilience and sustainability program. That's going to go towards preparing for natural disasters and cyber threats. Now, at the time they had $5 million, I testified that that's not enough across the country. We need a lot more. And so we're pushing to see that go through. We also are pushing for a new low-income water and wastewater assistance pilot program at EPA that will provide low-income assistance for individuals, like we talked before, who are not able to pay their bill. And also, too, request more clarity and consistency as far as how communities receive additional subsidy on the SRF funding, as I mentioned.
Right. And I think and I heard the bell, and I do want to be respectful of my colleague, Councilmember Squilla and Council President, but I just want to say this because of what you just said. That's the reason why I brought it up, because I know there are additional projects that are forthcoming. I received the emails and the information prior to these projects coming online because I'm a member of the Local Government Advisory Committee for EPA. And you know that when we receive some of these opportunities that are germane to Philadelphia, we do send them to the specific department or quasi-city agency or whoever may be eligible. But I brought it up because we have to be in a space and place, not only from the capital perspective, but from other innovative programs to receive these dollars, because it then helps us to defray some of our costs from a city perspective. So I just wanted, you walk right into it with everything you said, because that's why I brought it up. We have to be forward thinking about these opportunities for Philadelphia, because under this package, we have a chance to really help our residents who face some of the highest utility burden amongst any other municipalities in the country. This is our chance to do this. And I don't know that we'll see another package like this sort of in our professional lifetime with the amount of investment that we have now. If we don't get as much as we can now, we won't see this again or have another opportunity to do this. So I just wanted to put it on the record.
No, thank you. Thank you. And I just want to say Philadelphia Water has been strategic in pursuing the federal funding in the past. And as I said, any monies that are newly placed on the table, we're aggressively strategizing to try to have a voice in obtaining some of those funds too.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll submit the balance of my questions for a response. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilman Squilla.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Randy and Mark and Mike and everybody for testifying here, and appreciate all your comments and answering my questions from the Commerce Committee hearing also. But Mike, I know you pointed out clean water, Green Cities Clean Water Program, and how important that is for us, and it's really been a model that's been copied throughout the country. And but now we're talking about, as you talk about the climate change and the federal grants and the relaxed regulatory measures to provide opportunity to address the climate equity and advancement. We know the plan has about 15 more years, I think. Are we adjusting the earlier projections to implement the measures with the changes that are now in place and the federal grants that are available?
Commissioner.
Okay. Well, I would say we're certainly evaluating where we are and then looking at if there's any need to make any type of adjustment as far as how we're going to go forward in the coming years, as far as whether or not the green and the gray and all. And as we make those adjustments, we will certainly pursue monies that are available for those.
Well, I mean, I think it's important, right? Because as things change, we have to be able to adapt, and hopefully that will be able to speed up some of those changes. And on that, I know we looked at restrictions on Penvest, right, and the dollars. Do you think that can slow those restrictions, slow the progress on possible pollution cleanups?
So I'll speak to this a little bit. So yeah, I mean, this is one of the constraints that makes it harder for PW to do all of their business. But I think that there is good news. We have a meeting that we're trying to set up with the governor's appointee, is the chairman of the Penvest board. And so hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll start to develop a plan with them to reduce those restrictions. So as the commissioner said, we will become eligible for that type of grant funding and not the loans. So that will accelerate all the work. But in particular, as you mentioned, the Green Cities work is something we'll be focused on, certainly.
I mean, I think that would be helpful. And we spoke about that. Some of I think the requirements that were there, or I guess made it a little more difficult to use those dollars. So if we could tap into that, and hopefully that'll be something that we really look to do. And then as far as climate change and is going to affect the plans based on less rain, and are we looking at that also to look to adjust if we are going to have, if these projections are accurate? We're just going to make sure we have enough infrastructure to take care of the rain and the possible deluges that we have, but
Let me
the
ask
projections of
Mark
less rain
to address that.
Okay.
Yeah. Just to clarify, we are not seeing any projections associated with less rain. We're seeing projections with a lot more rain, more intense, more frequent storm events. So we are going to be exacerbating what is already a stressed system here in Philadelphia. So yeah, of course, we are looking at, the commissioner just enacted as policy last year, climate planning and design guidance for how we incorporate climate projections into all of our efforts moving forward, all of our project planning and, where possible, operations and maintenance protocols moving forward. But the idea is to constantly use the latest and greatest science that we have for climate projections, for not just for air temperature, for precipitation, for sea level rise, for storm surge, and in some instances, our understanding of increased periods of drought. We have to look at that science and figure out how we do long-term asset planning. So yeah, we look at vulnerabilities in the system. We look at risks associated with these extreme events, and we use all this science information to help us plan moving forward.
And I want to add too that I think we've had the climate change and adaptation program,
Commissioner,
for about
hold on
since 2015.
Commissioner, hold on one second. All right, no, somebody was talking. I was going to ask them to mute themselves, but
I'm sorry. That was my background noise from me.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilman.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead back to the sound. I'm
Okay.
sorry. I'm sorry.
I'll say quickly that we've had the climate change and adaptation program since about 2014. Philadelphia Water has been a leader in using good science, the best available science. The importance of what's happening with the climate resilient planning design guidance is that we're not addressing climate change as a one-off, that it is part of the guidance that's used in planning, designing, construction of all Philadelphia water projects to the extent feasible, including renewal and replacement of existing assets and the construction of new assets. So climate change is considered in every project going forward. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. I think that's expected, obviously, and it's something we need to really pay attention to. Another question is that, in our budget, I think it was PWD actually $222 million for 23-24 for the GCCW plan. How are we looking to spend the funding to reduce pollution where people are accessing the water or using the water for recreation, and mainly some of our areas that are underserved?
Okay. Mark, I'd like you to address that.
We make investments related to Green City Clean Waters throughout the combined sewage section of the city. We have 60 square miles where we need to make these investments. There's 164 locations where we discharge combined sewage into 4 different water bodies. And we look for opportunities to manage stormwater and reduce CSO throughout that entire area. So we do that with traditional infrastructure, whether that's pump station enhancements, whether that's treatment plant upgrades, whether that's distributed, decentralized nature-based infrastructure, whether that's capacity and conveyance improvements in the collection system, whether that's getting rid of some constrictions we see in our collection system, or that's better utilizing some of our regulating chambers to help us manage flow that is in the system better. These projects are all over the city. As the commissioner mentioned, we have 800 green infrastructure projects cited throughout, but we probably have at least 30, if not more, traditional infrastructure projects leveraged with those that have given us this benefit of over 3 billion gallons of CSO reduction. We have about 15 traditional projects slated in the next, I would say, 5 to 8 years or so that we can do for CSO mitigation, in addition to hundreds of others for green infrastructure located throughout. These are projects that serve the Cobbs, the Tacony, the Schuylkill, the Delaware, portions of the Pennypack.
And obviously, we know it's a big infrastructure challenge that we have here in the city with the combined CSOs. But you mentioned the overflows and how that works. And then we spoke last time, and I'll just real quick ask this question, because we talked about this in our committee hearing in Commerce. But when we talk about dry weather overflow, and we talk about what steps were taken to be responsible for the discharge, is there going to be money in the budget are we looking at that also, or looking at additional grant dollars or something to work with how we deal with the dry weather overflow? also in this? And I know we spoke about it before, but I don't know if we got a clear answer on that.
Yeah, we owe you some more detail. I know you sent a large list of questions, and we need a little time to pull that together, and we'll get you the responses that are due. Yeah, I just want to scale the issues we see with dry weather. I mean, the dry weather issues are, and I'll just use some numbers as examples here. Is maybe thousands of gallons of sanitary flow that make it to these creeks, whereas the wet weather issue are billions of gallons. So from a water quality perspective, I mean, the wet weather contributions coming from the combined system are drastic compared to what we see from the dry weather contribution coming from our MS4, our separate sewerage section of the city. We don't take it any less serious, right? That is still a pollution source. And we are bound by requirements in our permit with the regulators to try to mitigate those dry weather overflows. And we can give you a lot more detail on how we do defective lateral track down and abatements related to cross connections, and how we do outfall sampling and everything we do to kind of track down those pollutant sources. But I know that there's a common thought that, you know, some of the dry weather contribution is what's really causing some of these big water quality, you know, concerns that we see on the main water bodies. And I just want to clarify that it's, you know, unfortunately, it's the combined sewer issues. And that's where we're talking about multiple billions of gallons. And, you know, and that's the 12-year program with 13 years to go. And honestly, at the end of that 25-year program, we have a lot more to do as a city.
Right, and I'm sure we'll have more, and who knows what's going to happen 20 years from now as far as climate change. But we could do more than one thing at a time, right? And if we have access to other capital or maybe restrictions that are removed, then maybe we could do both the dry weather and the storm overflow.
Absolutely. If we're successful in getting additional funds that can be marked for the dry weather, we'll pursue those avenues also.
All right, and I'll submit my other questions. I know you have some questions for me that you're going to work on, so I appreciate your time and efforts on that, and then we'll continue that dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Councilman. I don't see any additional questions from members of the committee for this witness. There being none, I want to thank you, Commissioner, and your team, as always, for being extremely responsive and for your information. I am going to want to follow up offline about that whole issue with respect to the 25% appropriations versus staffing, because we just completed an analysis of actually Councilman Squilla as a part of the team on retention and reduction. And as I said earlier, you guys were real high up on the list in terms of vacancies. And if we're carrying vacancies that present a negative in terms of how many people, unfilled positions we have to the general public, I don't know if that's a good thing. And we're still able to function and operate at, I guess, a certain level and capacity. But I didn't want to belabor the point with respect to the 100 new requests for hires. So I'm probably going to need a little more detailed explanation.
We're more than happy to supply that. I just want to get across very clearly that we have a high retirement number. There's going to be more and more vacancies. We need to be able to fill those vacancies efficiently. They're needed many times for regulatory obligations that are out there. And so we're not asking for positions we don't need as much as we're having difficulty in filling them.
I understand. I mean, you're looking to be proactive, and that's a good thing. Yes, but again, that's why I took my council person hat off. And if the general population sees that you got 600 vacancies in the department, to them, it looks like we got a real problem here in the city of Philadelphia, and how are we functioning? That's all I'm saying. You know, okay. That's not a good look. All right. Okay, thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you all.
Mr. McDermott, next witness is?
Our next witness is Keisha Hudson, Chief Defender.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Council. Good afternoon, Council President and Council members. We are very appreciative of the mayor's proposed increase for our office. But as you will see, shortly. We have a very short presentation, of course, submitted much more detailed written materials. While this increase is very much needed, it really only covers the increased costs associated with our collective bargaining agreement, with our attorneys, and other increases brought on by inflation. We are requesting an additional $3 million. We need to make significant investments in our child advocacy unit and social services. These are investments in intervention that our data shows can redirect youth and adult clients from the justice system. We also need to make our office more reflective and responsive to our clients, their communities, and families. And that's why we're devoting even more resources to recruiting, developing, and retaining a talented and diverse staff. As you will see by the slide, a significant portion of our budget increase will go to provide additional staff and support for our child advocacy unit. Several of you and your staff members were present in March. We invited council members to come and meet our incredible team in the child advocacy unit and social services. And you heard from them directly how crucial the work that the child advocacy unit does is. So a lot of the resources we're asking for in this additional $3 million will go towards the child advocacy unit and the social services unit. We represent children who are the subject of child welfare proceedings in family courts, and our team of lawyers, social workers, and administrative staff helps get them connected with supportive services. This slide here shows you a snapshot of our CAU clients. As you can see, they are predominantly Black and Brown and live in every council district. Go to the next slide, please. You're not sure. Okay. I realize that you're not sharing the slide, so I'll just keep moving. So we represent children in the dependency system, so we are uniquely positioned to provide interventions at the earliest touch point. This early intervention can address 3 of the primary factors that increase the likelihood of young people participating in or being the victim of violence. These 3 primary factors are 1, the disruption of the family unit, 2, economic and housing instability, and 3, school disengagement. With our budget increase, we plan to add 6 attorneys and 6 social workers to the child advocacy unit so we can accept cases assigned to all the dependency courtrooms. Again, we are currently not staffing or representing clients in the 4th, the 9th, and I believe the 8th councilmanic district at the moment. Our social workers are also key members of our clients' legal team. Clients are represented by our specialty units, including the child advocate, homicide, mental health, and special defense, and our juvenile special defense. And every child charged as an adult are automatically assigned a social worker. Social workers are embedded in our practice units and receive specialized training to work with these types of cases. The balance of our adult clients are referred to social services by their attorneys. Our social workers handle hundreds of these referrals every month. And again, in our submitted materials, you can see the breakdown for our social service referrals, primarily for substance abuse and for mental health treatment, with 10% of our referrals also for housing. Many of our clients are housing insecure. The charges against our clients are becoming more serious. And again, our materials will show you the breakdown. We are seeing an increase in felony 1 charges, which again spurs the need for a much more intensive social services support for our clients. Last year, our office represented an astounding 64,760 cases, and we staffed 180,059 hearings. 85% of our adult clients and 95% of our youth clients are people of color. The defenders spend considerable resources on ways to make our office, what our office is doing, a more reflective and responsive to our practice. And we are sensitive to the diversity of our clients, and we want our staff here to reflect that diversity. So we have been working incredibly hard to not only bring in more diverse staff, especially attorneys, but we also have to focus on keeping those attorneys with training, with programming, and with opportunities for management and leadership. The Defender has always had strong ties with community organizations, and we're investing even more resources into our community outreach. Last year, we staffed 75 community events in 2022. We primarily, at these community events, run in expungement clinics. Last year, we filed over 15,000 expungement applications. And I want to thank our alternative sentencing unit for last year filing 283 requests for probation termination. Again, our written testimony has a lot more details, facts, and data. Once again, thank you for the support you have shown the Defender Association, and I'm happy to now take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you for your service and your work for a much needed population in particular. We appreciate it. I can recall a conversation that actually precedes you with respects to parity, some respects as it relates to the workforce. And I know that we tried as best possible. I think we addressed it, but a part of it that we could not figure out a way to get was the benefits. And there was some conversation about employees being able to join the city's pension plan so we can get those much needed benefits. I don't think that we were allowed to do that under the law. You had to be a department of the city. The decision was made not to go that direction.
Correct.
What's the process, or what's the status of benefits for the employees in the Defenders Association?
I have to tell you the majority of our employees do not contribute to their 403B plan. They're not in a financial place to be able to do so. When I appeared before council last year and thanked council mightily for the allotment for last fiscal year, that was all devoted to salary. But again, that barely brought our staff, including our non-attorney staff, to what anyone would term a livable wage. And so I don't have the exact number here, but it's over 50% of our staff do not contribute to their 403B plan. They have nothing to retire with. 15% of our staff are over the age of 65. And so we are going to have an increased challenge in the next several years as people near retirement age. But again, these people who are predominantly Philadelphians do not have a penny saved in any sort of a retirement fund.
All right. So what about the state? Was there a similar conversation with the state? I don't know if they have similar restrictions. I'm assuming most of your people live in the state. Maybe not, but I'm assuming most do. Has those conversations happened with the state to be a part of the state retirement?
We have only had conversations with the city, and the city funds this organization. The city is a predominant funder of this organization. Right. As we all know, Pennsylvania legislature does not fund public defense here or anywhere else throughout the state. And they're predominantly city residents. However, one of our retention issues is that the nearby county public defender offices do offer pensions in Delaware County and in Montgomery County. And people can easily commute when they live in Montgomery County or Delaware County. So that is our challenge, both on salary and, but more concerned for us for benefits. New Jersey, our neighboring state, and Maryland also pay public defenders higher wages. So again, when we look at recruitment and retention, that is a concern for us, both short-term and long-term.
Okay. Yeah, I know we're looking at that on our, I said we're going to be releasing a report, and we found that the compensation levels on the municipal level are not competitive. I mean, call it like it is with a lot of the surrounding counties and townships, and particularly the private sector, it's even more so. And I know to some degree you're somewhat private, but you deal with a population that's clearly for the public good. All right, I just was wondering about that. And you just got to figure out a way to get your folks some benefits. It's just something. I mean, that it's a lot of cases is so much more important than salaries in some instances. You get this retirement issue is like more than a notion. Because I'll soon find out, but I'm happen to be fortunately a member of the city of Philadelphia's pension plan, so I'll be good, right? But your people will not be able to experience that. All right, on my end, I'll continue to try to give it some thought and maybe have some conversations. Although the state does not fund you all, they should at minimum, I think. Now I'll try to facilitate that conversation.
We would very much appreciate that. We would very much appreciate that, and our team here would very much appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you gotta get these people some kind of benefits. All right. Thank you. I'll get back to you on the questions.
Thank you, Council President.
Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gautier.
Thank you, Council President, and good afternoon, Chief Defender Hudson.
Good afternoon, Councilmember.
Thank you for your testimony and for everything you and your team do for our city. Thanks also for attending my recent hearing about youth and gun violence and sharing a critically important perspective on how we tackle this growing crisis. I wanted to clarify a few points from your testimony. Can you say a little more about what you meant by the womb to prison pipeline?
So we are calling it the womb to prison pipeline. We are one of only 2 public defender agencies in the state that has a child advocacy unit. So we represent children who are in the brought into the dependency system, and a dependent petition has been filed, and we are appointed as a child advocate. Our data shows, and I'll bring up the specific statistics. When we did a snapshot of our children housed at the JJSC in February, 34% of those children housed there on a delinquency matter. Also, 34% of them had a dependency matter as well. So we are seeing a lot of our youth who come in initially through the dependency system are getting arrested while they either have a prior and or active dependency case pending, being housed in the JJSC for delinquency matter. 24% of all our children who are charged as adults had a prior or active dependency case, and 25% of our youth charged as adults had a prior or active dependency matter. So we're seeing the impact of involvement in the dependency system lead to and contribute to delinquent behavior, and for even our adult clients getting arrested when they're over 21. So we titled it the womb to prison pipeline because that is what's happening. That entanglement in the system, that disruption of the family unit has an impact. Philadelphia leads the nation in being the #1 city that displaces Black and brown children. And so we should not be surprised that that displacement is now being a primary factor in that youth picking up a delinquency matter or a young adult picking up an adult criminal charge. So our investments have to happen as early as possible. We get appointed sometimes from birth. We have the children sometimes up to age 21. While we have that child, our interdisciplinary model of a social worker and an attorney for every case, we can provide intensive services and supports to that child and their family. Focus on the preservation of the family unit, but also what resources and support does that family or kinship care giver need. And with increased support from council, having experienced attorneys, having social workers, we're also asking for an education attorney to really be able to do the critical intervention work that we can do, and be part of what we are titling a continuum of care. If we have that child for 1 year or 20, we should be able to ensure that they are getting support and connection to services, including housing, so that when they age out of the dependency system, that they can continue to lead productive, wonderful lives. And so that's why the resources we're asking for will go to the CAU.
Thank you so much for that. Going back to the hearing we had last week about youth and gun violence, you were very clear that the best ways to prevent gun violence are, in fact, outside of the justice system, that children need enough to eat, they need safe and stable housing, access to quality education, caretakers who earn a living wage, and healthcare, and even more. And so my question to you is, what would you suggest is the most critical budget ask for council to focus on this year in order to help reduce the levels of youth getting involved in gun violence?
Yes, and thank you again for inviting us to participate in that hearing last week. And we discussed the reason why our youth are becoming ensnared in gun violence, and the fact that they're living in communities that have been disinvested. They're living in neighborhoods that are impacted by violence, and they are witnesses to and victims of that violence as well. We talked about one client in particular in the Strawberry Mansion area who lived, over 10 shootings happened within 750 feet of where he lived. And so our kids who are picking up guns or carrying guns or have none, or have possessory charges are not doing it because they want to be cool, or they saw it on social media. In our experience, from the work we do with them and when we talk to them, they're doing it because they are terrified that they're not going to live to see the next day. And so we have to, when we talk about mobile crisis and the importance of things like mobile crisis, we need to think about that approach when it comes to gun violence, not just for our youth, but also for their families who are not equipped from a poverty level, from a disinvestment level, from a housing instability level. When my client is sleeping in a car and has no housing, they're not particularly, they don't care about school. And so seeing someone in family court for truancy when they're homeless, right? Those are not the right responses to solving the issue that our clients need. So we're asking for social services. We want to do more wraparound care. We want to have a case management approach so that we can target these children and their families and go in like mobile crisis and address not just the child or the young adult, but their families as well. And an increased need for social workers and mitigation specialists will help us do that and will help us stem that pipeline.
Thank you. And lastly, can you talk about how increases in arrest for serious charges impact your work and budget needs in this moment in our city?
Yeah. So while the overall charges are down, but we are seeing an increase in felony 1 charges. I take immense pride in this organization and our reputation for excellence in the courtroom. But there's a lot of work that happens outside of the courtroom, and we have fantastic trial lawyers here because we provide excellent training. They work incredibly hard. But also our social workers and our investigators and our administrative staff do a lot of work as well to prepare those cases. We do not put a lawyer who's 6 months out of law school or a year out of law school or 2 years out of law school to try the most serious cases because that is not client-centered. It's not going to serve our clients well. You don't see cases coming back where the city is sued for millions of dollars that were represented by a public defender. That doesn't happen because we do excellent work. But the more serious the cases, the more trained the attorney needs to be, the more trained the social worker or mitigation specialist needs to be to represent that client effectively and connect them to services. We, unlike some other counties, around the state where someone 6 months out of law school might do a capital murder, and I have had cases where that was in fact the representation. We do not do that here. Our clients get excellent representation and zealous representation because they need it and they deserve it.
Thank you so much. I wanted to touch on that because I think it's especially critical when we're talking about increased investments in enforcement and even in our ability to clear and solve more cases. I think we need to invest in people's ability to have a good public defense. So thank you for all of the work that you do. Thank you, Council President. I heard the bell.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Chair recognizes Councilwoman Gilmore Richardson.
Thank Thank you, Council President, and thank you so much, Ms. Hudson, for your testimony. I just wanted to ask a general question relative to the Child Welfare Unit. And if you could just talk about sort of the caseloads for the unit, what are national best practices, and what a investment in that unit would look like in this process, and how you'd be able to help, how many young people would you be able to help, and how with that investment?
Right. And so our last year, I believe we had open 1,500 cases in our child advocacy unit. It's, as I said before, every child, it's an interdisciplinary model, which is the best recommended model around the country, where we put an attorney and a social worker are assigned to represent that child throughout the course of their cases. As I mentioned before, we have children as early as they're newborn, and we represent them all the way till they're 21. One thing that we are realizing, which is what the data is showing and why we're asking for increased services, is that when our children are 13 or 14, if they're being placed outside of the home or in the dependency system, they are very vulnerable to then getting involved in delinquent matters. So we want to really focus on our older youth population. We also want to work very closely with them and their families and or kinship care to make sure they can transition out of the dependency system successfully. And so that means that we have to connect them to resources and social services support. I also mentioned we are not currently staffing, we are not currently representing children in the 4th, 8th, and 9th councilmanic districts. And so we are asking for 6 attorneys and 6 social workers so we can represent all of Philadelphia's children brought into the dependency system. And so we're asking for that increased support.
Got it. Well, thank you very much for your work, and thank you for meeting with me in advance of the hearings. I think that was really helpful for me and important to how we sort of look at and frame this conversation during budget time. So I just wanted to say thank you, to your team, to your policy team, for all the work that we do collaboratively together. And of course, a special shout out to Rhonda Harvey. So thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you so much, Council Member.
Thank you, Council Member. Any other questions by council members for this witness? There being none, I want to thank you very much, and we're going to keep looking at that benefits package.
Thank you.
Gotta figure that out. We gotta figure that out for our folks.
Thank you,
thank
Council.
you, and thank you for your awesome
Good
work. We
afternoon.
really appreciate it. There being no additional questions, this committee will stand in recess until Wednesday, 26 at 10 a.m., which time we will reconvene in remote manner using Microsoft Teams. Tomorrow, we have callbacks, and we have public testimony in the afternoon. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. See you tomorrow.